of our department's most vital priorities. So I assume if this Republican convention begins on planned security, which already had been anticipated as being extraordinary, will be beefed up even more so, right?
There's no question about it, Wolf. I mean, this already is a major security event. Protests have been one thing that was discussed. Now, of course, the safety and security of the attendees will be front and center. The U.S. Secret Service has been on the scene in Milwaukee for weeks and months planning this, but this takes on an extraordinarily new level. And Wolf, we all know service agents. We've covered the White House, and talking with one former one this evening, this is something that is their biggest fear. They take their jobs so seriously, Republican or Democrat, it does not matter. You elect, we protect. That is their motto. So certainly every agent, every member of that is taking this very seriously tonight. But there's no question that convention in Milwaukee will be highly secure. Wolf.
As will the Democratic convention in Chicago
Right.
in August, a few weeks later. And all of us who have been White House correspondents work closely with the Secret Service, and we are always so impressed by what they're doing, trying to protect the president and the first family, indeed, and other officials who work at the White House as well. We're all grateful to the U.S. Secret Service. Anderson, back to you.
Well, thanks, Pennsylvania Congressman Dan joins me now. He was in the front row at the rally today. Congressman, thank you for being with us. I'm so sorry we're talking under these circumstances. Can you talk about what you experienced, what you saw when you knew something was wrong? Congressman, okay. Yeah, Congressman, can you hear me? It's Anderson Cooper.
Hello, everybody. It is
Okay, we're having trouble making connection. We'll try to get back in touch with the congressman very shortly. Tim Naftali, presidential historian, is here with me in New York. Again, I mean, I don't know how this impacts things moving forward.
No, we don't. None of the major players in this story know how to act things going forward.
And how they plan to talk about it, and use it or not.
What I hope I'm speaking on behalf of many people. What I desperately hope for is that we stop talking about vengeance in any form, any kind, by anyone. Our language, this campaign has been, the language has been tough and extreme. And I think to move the country in a direction, we have to keep talking about how political violence is unacceptable and that we have crossed some mad person crossed a line and we want to go back. And so that's what I look for. When this has happened before in our history, that is the way we've responded as a people. We've talked about how this was wrong. We are better than this. We have asked ourselves, is there a sickness? This is how we deal with these issues time and again. And I expect it to be the same this time. It's really important that that first of all, the President Trump fully recover, and that both conventions are provide an opportunity for healing. Of course, they're going to push for their own candidate because that's the way we are. We're competitive people, and that's how a democracy should work. But there should be an element at both conventions that our country sometimes takes the wrong turn, and we have a history of violence, and we don't want to see it again.
Pennsylvania Congressman Daniel Muser is back with us. He, as I said before, he was in the front row at the rally today. Congressman, I appreciate you joining. I'm sorry to under these circumstances. Can you talk about what you saw, what you realized things were going, what had happened?
Yeah, thanks, Anderson. Yeah, it started out like a regular rally. President Trump came in, took pictures, and spent a little bit of time. He came speaking no longer than 6 minutes, and the next thing you know, there was rapid fire. It was pretty obvious after the second or third gunshot what was happening. Particularly, I turned to see where it was coming from, and then my eyes fixated on the president, saw him grab his ear, and then hit the deck. grabbed the side of his head. I wasn't sure if it was his ear at the time. And then the Secret Service came in, did their thing. Our Pennsylvania State Police over the scene. Pandemonium broke out. People were crying. They weren't sure if the shooter was still firing because there were a couple of added shots when the Secret Service was up there. So it was quite a scene.
Were you aware that, we know one person in the crowd was killed, two others were wounded. We don't know the extent of those wounds. Were you aware that others in the crowd had been?
Yes. The one was not far from me where I was sitting. I was in the front row with Dave McCormick and Mike Kelly to the right of the stage. And the individual who was fatally shot and killed was no more than 20 feet behind us. And so everybody started certainly screaming, asking for a medic. And honestly, it was a bloody scene.
How long happened afterward? And once the former president got into the vehicle, what happened then?
Well, it was a little chaotic, right? The Secret Service was saying, "Tell everybody get down." They on the move. They were protecting the president. They were looking for the shooter, or if there was another shooter, because as it turned out, I think you've seen that the shooter on the roof was taken out pretty by Secret Service right after we heard the final shots. So thank God for that. But we weren't sure if there were others. I mean, when you hear gunfire like that, it sounds like you don't know where it's coming from. So it was a lot of people were very panicked, but fortunately they settled down after a little while, particularly when President Trump honestly stood up and gave thumbs up. That kind of calmed the crowd a little bit.
It seems that the shooter was on the top of a roof, not in the perimeter that just outside, but obviously a lot of questions about why he wasn't seen. There was an eyewitness who was interviewed by the BBC who said that person had seen him crawl up the building, was pointing to him for several minutes, trying to alert people to his presence. What questions do you have at this point? Should the convention, it seems, is going to move forward, going to begin on Monday as planned?
Yeah. And on that situation, I'm not sure about any of that. I heard some of that too. Obviously somebody took films and somebody said, "Hey, I saw an individual on the roof." I'm not sure if they informed police or if they anything was notified there. So we'll see what happens then. Yeah, President Trump's already put out that he's going to get the convention. He's on his way, I think, back to Bedminster. I did hear a motorcade left the hospital that he was taken to. And thank God. I mean, he was within a quarter of an inch probably of being assassinated.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if it was the bullet that grazed the top of his ear, quarter of an inch in the wrong direction could have been fatal. Congressman, I do appreciate your time tonight. I'm sorry for what you and everybody there went through, and glad that the former president is well and moving. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anderson. Yeah, thanks for your concern. Thanks for the civility, and we really got to move the hostility. I think everybody agrees. This is we need to cool things down.
Yeah, let's hope. Thank you, Congressman Wolf.
Clearly, the rhetoric on both sides has to calm down. Anderson, I want to bring in Evan Perez right now. Evan, you got some new reporting about what the congressman just mentioned. The shooter was located. Give us the information that you're getting.
Right. Well, what we know is, the location where you saw Elena Train reporting just a little while ago, that's the location, that's the building to the right of where the former president, to his right, where the former president, when he was standing, that's the building where law enforcement believed the shooter was firing those multiple shots that the Secret Service says fired toward the former president. Now we have video that we can show from somebody who was at the scene there and was taking video of. Okay, I'm told that we're about to get that in there, but there's video, Wolf, that shows the rooftop of that building. That's where the alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, is believed to have fired the multiple shots that went toward the president and the stage there. Again, this is, there's varying estimates out there, but it looks very, very close. Right outside the venue, would have been right outside where the Secret Service does screening for anyone who goes inside the rally. So again, we're talking probably the distance of about a football and a half from where the alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, was on the, and where it appears that's where the people who were attending the rally could clearly see the body of that person down after the counter snipers from the Secret Service immediately took action and shot and killed him. So that's what we believe. That's what law enforcement at this point believes. That's what the order of events. That's where the alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, was standing, or was, again, very short, close distance to the venue where the former president was speaking for just about 6 or 7 minutes. Now, that raises some very big questions, of course, for the Secret Service. Okay, we can see now, again, shot by one of the attendees at the rally. You can see the person there on the rooftop. This is after the Secret Service, it appears, already shot and killed this person. They're down on that rooftop. That's where Elena Train is seeing that huge police presence. There's every law enforcement agency is at that scene trying to collect some evidence. She saw, as well, also saw an ambulance there. So it appears, again, by the crime scene investigation that is being done as we speak, Wolf. And so what we see there in that video is the moments after the counter snipers from the Secret Service take action and take out the alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, who again is firing from that elevated position, that rooftop that is just outside of where the rally was taking place. Again, not a very, very short, not a long distance at all. And it'll raise some very important questions for the Secret Service and the protocols that were being taken before this rally. We've to all of these events, Wolf, and we know we've all seen Secret Service, local SWAT teams, every elevated position that could possibly be where someone could take the person who is being protected. And so the question that emanate from this today is what was done to try to secure those positions that are outside of the rally. Wolf?
Yeah, because normally you would think that they would be watching an elevated spot like that, but sadly, clearly someone missed that spot right there, and the shooter shot those bullets.
Wolf, I will say real quick, one last thing I will say. I mean, there is from additional video that is out there that shows the Secret Service. They are also at an elevated position, so they had visibility and could take that person out quickly while those shots. I mean, they acted extremely quick, so they did the right thing once those shots were fired. They acted, obviously, after the shots were fired already. Wolf?
And very quickly, Evan, do we have any sense at all, given the distance, that elevated rooftop over where the former president was speaking, used to fire those bullets?
Again, we only know from some of the eyewitnesses who've told police that they believe it was a rifle, a long rifle. We don't know what kind of rifle, and that's something that you have ATF there at the scene. They're going to be doing a trace roll of that firearm to see where it was fired, where it was purchased, whether this person bought it, who bought it, and where, how long ago that happened. Again, as part of this investigation that is now ongoing.
Our Elena Treen is on the scene for us. Evan, stand by. We'll get back to you. She's getting more information. What else are you learning, Elena?
Well, Wolf, I'm told, I actually just spoke with a police officer who's on the scene here tonight. They say that this building behind me is the one where the shooter was on the roof here behind that. Evans law enforcement sources have confirmed that as well. Now, to the left of that building from my location, actually on the stage, it was to the right of Donald Trump's right shoulder, over Trump's right shoulder. That is where the shots were coming from, the officer on the ground told me. Now, You can see there's still a heavy police presence here. As I had said earlier, there were at least a dozen police cars around this area. We immediately came over here to ask about what the heavy police presence was for. And like I said, a police officer on the ground confirmed to me that, yes, this is where the shooter was, on the roof. We're still getting additional details, but as you can see, the fence here, there's a fence around the perimeter where the stage and the rally was. This building is outside of that fence. It's definitely higher than the fence. You can see that the fence doesn't go that high. There is a red building, and I'm not sure if you can see it on our camera here. There's a red building to the right of the stage. That is where the snipers, I had saw them myself on the ground when I was inside the rally. The snipers were on top of the building, and that's where they were able to immediately respond to the shooter in real time. But you can see, I mean, it's very dark now. It obviously wasn't earlier today. You can see here, though, just how close this building is to the actual rally venue and the stage itself, where Donald Trump was speaking earlier very briefly before the round of shots were fired. Wolf?
Elena Treen on the scene for us. Elena, thank you very much. Anderson, back to you.
About 10 p.m. here on the East Coast, less than 4 hours into the investigation of an assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
That is final Republican National Convention, the rally being held in Butler, Pennsylvania, just a few miles north of Pittsburgh. The former was just a few minutes into his remarks, referring to a large graphic nearby when all of a sudden shots were fired.
So we're going to play you the entirety of it, so you hear not just how it unfolded, you're going to hear the voices of the Secret Service agents as they piled on the former president to protect him, and as they tried to figure out exactly when they could move him off, move him off until the shooter had been killed, had been neutralized. You're going to hear them, and also hear the voice of the former president at several points. This point.
No, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Move. Go. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stand. Get ready. You ready? Are we good? Shooter's down. Are we good to move? Good to move. We're clear. We're clear. Come on. Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes. Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we're going to move to the bus.
The former president was hit in the ear and hustled away to a local hospital. The gunman who fired from outside the security perimeter, this is new video of him on the top he fired from, was killed. This is a video of him after he was dead. So one of the rally spectators was also killed. 2 others critically wounded. And we're also going to show you this aerial photo that we have, just giving you a location of the building where the shooter was. You can see there the location of the suspect gunman's position toward the top of the screen, and you can see the approximate area of the stage where the former president was shot. you a sense of the location of both and how it was outside the perimeter. Wolf?
And just a short time ago, Anderson, the former president posted on social media about the incident, said among other things this, quote, "I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the fan at the rally who was killed, to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America." That was the statement that was just issued by the former president. Anderson.
Yeah, Wolf's right now on the phone is Dr. Joseph Mine. He was at the rally and witnessed the shooting. Dr. Mine, thank you for talking to. Just tell us, first of all, where you were when the shots went out and what you did.
I was at the seated section right in front of the bleachers at the far left of the stage. So in the absolute right flank of where President Trump was speaking at the podium.
And the president was taken away. I realized immediately what was going on.
Yeah, I'm familiar with gunfire. So I was there with friends. I heard 7 shots in very quick succession, like 7 shots, probably under maybe a second and a half. Someone sitting next to me said, who brought crackers to the rally? And I knew immediately it was gunfire. And my friend, hit the deck. I didn't hit the deck initially because I saw where the rounds coming. There was a man in the bleachers adjacent to me that took a gunshot wound to the head. As a physician, I could tell just when he was killed instantly.
You saw him being hit?
Yeah, I saw him being hit, and then within a few rounds, I swung back to look at the podium, and that's when I saw President Trump get hit in the right ear. So I was in the sit section right in front of the bleachers, so I jumped. Because I'm a physician, so I thought it would render aid. So I jumped the metal, the seated section, and the bleachers. The man had been, hit in the head, had been killed. I helped lift him up and take him out of the bleachers, and they took him to a tent behind the bleachers where I believe they were going to evaluate him some more. Then I noticed another woman was in the bleachers that she had a gunshot wound in hand, but I wasn't exactly sure because they were rushing her out, but it looked like she might have had a gunshot wound to the chest as well.
So the man you saw being shot and killed, he was shot before, you believe, the former president?
I believe he was in the way of the gunfire. So I believe whoever it was in the way he's a complete stranger to me. But the bullets as they were being fired, he was in the crossfire. He was in the way. So in that fusillade of rounds that were, he was hit within the first round or two. A round or two after that is when President Trump was hit. I saw it. I have it on video, but on my phone. But he was hit in the right ear. And again, that's when I saw, Secret Service, pulled him to the ground and then beat him out. But I mean, initially, I think half the crowd thought it was fireworks or goes a prank. But I think far right from the podium, as you were looking at the podium, dead on, the crowd close to the gunfire. You knew it was because people were getting hit. So I think there was a few seconds of confusion, but people responded pretty quickly.
I'm not sure when it was that you learned the location of the shooter. We've now seen the aerial picture of his location, the building where he was at, and the stage where the former president was speaking. Were you aware that's where the shots were coming?
rounds sail across me, basically. It's kind of a humid day, so there were 7 shots in rapid succession. I saw a man get hit, and then I saw the rounds traveling kind of right to my left to right. And so I assumed, initially I thought, I'm just leaving the venue now. So I haven't seen any of the video. I've talked to authorities. I'm just leaving. It just seemed to me like the rounds were coming at either behind or just above where the bleachers were. But it was coming from behind the bleachers and heading towards the podium for Trump. So where I was sitting, the rounds were going from left to right.
As you said, you're a doctor. You're familiar with shots. You've seen lots of violence before, but being there, witnessing that, I know you haven't had time maybe to even think too much about it, but how are you doing?
Yeah, it's kind of too early to tell. Like you kind of, I think in medical training, you're trained to reflexively do things. So when you see something bad happen, you jump in that action and try to, there's really no aid to give for the gentleman that took the gunshot wound to the head. So it was just, I asked, they didn't really need aid. I helped take them out of the bleachers briefly, and then I went to go check on my friends, and that's when I noticed other people were hit, but they were already being evacuated. So it's just a lot to process. I really haven't thought about it a lot. So like I said, it's too fresh in my mind.
Yeah. Well, Doctor, I'm sorry for what you and everybody there went through, and I appreciate you talking to us.
Sure. Thank you.
Wolf.
Henderson, we've just learned that President Biden has changed his plans in the wake of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. For more on that, let's go to CNN's Priscilla Alvarez. She's joining us from the White House right now. So what's going on, Priscilla?
Yeah, well, if the president had been scheduled to leave Rehoboth, Delaware, that's where he has a residence, to Texas on Monday for events, that has now changed. We are learning only minutes ago that the president will now be returning to the White House tonight. Now, I have been talking to sources over the course of the evening who have told me just utter shock. One senior administration official telling me, quote, "It is just really horrible." When I asked about it at the former president's rally. Now, the president of course condemned political violence and told reporters with the former president. Now, those remarks, I'm also being told, were decided by the president himself. Of course, when this all unfolded, the president was at church again in Delaware, and it was only after he left that he was briefed on what occurred. And it was in that moment, a source tells me, that the president said that he wanted to address the nation, and that is indeed what he did this evening. Now, of course, the Biden campaign also changing their posturing. Tonight, they have decided to pause their communications and pull down all TV ads. A memo also going out to staff telling to refrain from commenting on social media. So a lot of movement both within the White House and within the Biden campaign tonight, as they have just been shocked by what they have seen. Again, Wolf, just to go back to the breaking news here, the president will be returning to the White House. He had not been scheduled to until next week.
Yeah, he will fly from Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to Joint Base outside of Washington, D.C., then motorcade to the White House tonight. Priscilla, thank you very much for that. Phil Mattingly, you're watching all of this unfold. I know you're your sources. What else you learned?
I think what's going on, not just inside the House, but I think across kind of the political spectrum right now, is there's genuine shock. And I think that for people who might say, well, if you've been listening, if you've been watching what's happening, if you've seen, and Dana did a great job pointing this out earlier, that over the course of the last 10, 11, 12 years, there's actually been numerous incidents. It is still a moment where you can't believe that you were watching it live, as I think a lot of us were, or if you've been watching it since, looking at the pictures, and I want to actually use their names here, Evan Vucci, Doug Mills, Anna Munker, who took these shots that are shots for history, these photographs from near the stage. You almost can't believe that you're in this moment. These are the moments you read about in 1968. These are the moments that you read about with Reagan. And the fact here, a lot of what people are doing right now, grappling with what does this mean for what happens next. We know that the Republican convention is next week. We know that the former president has already, you saw him in the moment, rally his supporters. You can almost be certain that he will be doing that times about 50 when he gets there. How do Democrats react? So there's the politics of this, but I think people right now are just trying to get this was already a very unsettling time. This was already a political
campaign where really sure where it was going to go. Everyone seemed to be uncomfortable about that fact and however it was going to end up. And this only, I think, accelerates that feeling with 100+ days to go in a way that I don't think anybody expected 24 hours ago. Yeah, people, how could this happen in the United States of America? But unfortunately, as you and Dana pointed out, it's happened many times in the United States again tonight.
And, you know, for a history lesson, he is the fourth former president to be the target of an attempted assassination, right? I mean, this is history, what we're going through today. And it's a sad part of history. It is a black mark on this country that this has happened. Remind our viewers how fresh this is. I'm talking to law enforcement officials who are still trying to figure out, you know, who the gunman is, how he obtained the weapon, what kind of a weapon it is. I mean, right now, not just, you know, folks in Washington, elected officials are processing this, law enforcement officials are trying to sort through this. And we just are learning, Wolf, that the FBI and the Pittsburgh FBI now is taking the lead on this investigation. So you have that aspect of it, but then the broader security concerns heading into the RNC next week and the DNC shortly after that. You had the statement from the Homeland Security Secretary saying that DHS is in touch with the campaigns and that and protecting Trump and Biden are vital priorities. But there's a lot of questions tonight about how this could happen, how the shooter could get so close to the former president and the Republican presidential nominee and pull this off. And as we've been saying all night, just think about this, less than an inch away from potentially assassinating Donald Trump.
If it hit the right part of his ear, if it went a quarter of an inch higher, it would have gone through the
so
skull.
close.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just remarkable to think about this.
Yeah,
Fortunately, he is okay.
Fortunately, indeed. You know, Dana, I thought President Biden's speech before was very strong, very powerful. When he made the points, political violence is never appropriate. Everyone must condemn it. And he said he hopes to speak on the phone with former President Trump soon.
Look, that is the kind of reaction that we as Americans hope that you see from somebody who is engaged in the most intense, contentious political fight of his life, when his contender, who is ahead of him in the polls right now, has his competitor, I should say, has an event like this and assassination attempt on his life. The fact that President Biden is back to the White House is the most appropriate thing he could be doing right now. Look, I think that, you know, Tim Naftali has been talking about everybody's in shock right now, and there's no diminishing the horror that we all saw live, and the fact that an innocent person who went to do what people in America are supposed to be free to do, which is rally support for the person that they believe to be the next president, which is clearly what all of the people who are behind the former president at that rally were to do, and he lost his life. There is a kind of a blood-soaked history in this country of political leaders, presidents in both parties, either getting actually assassinated or being the victim of assassination attempts. And, you know, it hasn't happened in a while, thank goodness. And let's just hope that there's a wake-up call right now and everybody just it down.
And, you know, let's not forget that this assassination attempt was against a father. We're getting statements from the former president's family. Donald Trump Jr. says he spoke to his father. I spoke to my father on the phone and he's in great spirits. He will never stop fighting to save America, no matter what the radical left throws at him. We're getting a lot of statements from his family as well. You can only imagine how shocked and horrified they were by this attempt.
I think it's true that across the board, we have seen appropriate statements from almost everyone, from President Biden, President Obama, former President Clinton, of course, his family. I just want to talk for a minute about its service, because I've covered many presidential campaigns. I remember when Jesse Jackson ran in the 80s, and he was no question a target for
for a lot of threats and attacks. Same for President Obama. The Secret Service are very professional. This is a nightmare for them, what's happened here. And we do not know yet why someone was able to get on top of that building. Pretty obvious to us at this moment, but there may have been incidents outside their control. But I do remember in talking to Secret Service details for president candidates that they often said, if someone is willing to give up their life, there's not a lot we can always do about it because they can get at times very close to a candidate. I'm not saying that's what happened here. We don't know yet about why that person got on the building, but these service agents, they put their lives on the line to protect these people, and I don't think we should forget.
And as you and I know, these Secret Service agents who are assigned to the White House, they not only protect the president and the first family, they everyone at the White House, including those of us who have been White House reporters, many times Secret Service agents helping me. But go ahead.
Listen, Secret Service, like counterterror officers, they have the toughest in the world, right? Because you only know about their failures. You don't know about their successes. And counterterror with the Secret Service, you know that they have prevented, probably long before it gets to this point, countless plots against presidents, some of which we hear about. There was one going back to President Obama in 2011. It's a difficult job, and there are threats everywhere. And you know about only their failures, very rarely their successes. In terms of where we are today, and this is another thing in the wake of this, you want to be worried about where political fire is directed now, right? Is it there's an incendiary quality to the political discourse that no matter what happens, there's an our side, your side kind of view and lens. The FBI is taking over this investigation. The FBI itself has been the target of armed attacks, particularly and threats in the wake of, for instance, the raid on Mar-a-Lago of classified documents. In each case, if any organization, institution is seen as being on the opposite side of the ramparts, politically, it becomes a target of attacks. And I think, and that's one reason why in the wake of this, all of these statements are so important. So many of them have that phrase, political violence has no place in our society, from Biden, from Republican lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers. I saw Martin Luther King Jr., of course, better than him. He says exactly that. And we're hearing it from international leaders as well, saying very similar, because they look at the states with concern, although we should note that violent political discourse confined to this country, as I'm watching, the Israeli prime minister comments on this, of course, they lost a prime minister to assassination, Yitzhak Rabin. As I'm watching the Japanese prime minister comment, they lost a former prime minister in Shinzo Abe to a political assassination. The UK had an MP assassinated. So, this is a quality of political discourse that is sadly becoming quite common.
Sadly.
Wolf, just quickly, Liz Cheney, I don't know if you've read this before. She put out a statement. She obviously has been on the other side with Donald Trump. She said reports of the shooting in Pennsylvania are horrifying, and violence of any kind has no place in American politics. I do want to say there was one thing that when I watched the tape, I found odd because of all of the heated rhetoric. And that is that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
Yeah, I just know one thing on this, to that point. His co-campaign manager, Chris LaSavita, just put out a tweet or posted on X, and he made clear in that post, blamed a lot of things, which I think a lot of Republicans, I think we're all hearing. Republicans are mad. There are a lot of Republicans who are mad and believe there's a lot that led to this moment, and they want to blame people for that. LaSavita said, making very clear, you win this, you end this at the ballot box. And I think whether people focus on that is the outcome here, and kind of continue down, whether it's a benevolent statement or not, whether the focus is on that versus continuing the acceleration we've seen over the course of the last several years, I think is going to be a very real question, and a question that the answer may have very real consequences on over the course of the coming weeks.
Yeah, all right, guys, everybody stand by. Anderson, back to you.
Thanks very much. I want to go next to CNN's John Miller with more details on what Pamela reported a moment ago. And Shamshudo just mentioned on the FBI now taking the lead in the investigation with us, as well as former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. But before I do that, I believe we have a new video. I haven't seen it yet. That it's a different angle. Let's play this. All right, it's pretty far away. Just that's obviously from a different angle as the former president's been led away. John Miller, I'm just wondering what you have been, anything more you have been hearing from your sources.
Really something that said, take a look at what happened.
Well, I think 22 minutes ago, the revelation, and I'm quoting that statement, the FBI has assumed the role of the lead federal law enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident involving former President Donald Trump that occurred today in Butler, Pennsylvania. That means they are bringing a significant amount of resources into this tonight with that announcement. That's the Critical Incident Response Group will be driving up with vehicles and equipment from Quantico. The FBI's evidence response team will be doing a grid search over that entire area where the rally was and outside rally. That means elements of the SIRG group, including BAU1, the behavioral profilers, will be involved. Significant parts of the counterterrorism division and the joint terrorism task force will join the criminal division. Why the FBI and not the Secret Service? Because that's actually normal. The Secret Service's job is to protect their protectee, in this case, former president, stop any assassination attempt, take out the potential assassin. But after that happens, they are part and parcel. But the FBI is going to be operating under the federal law that makes it a federal crime to attempt to assault or kill a federal officer or a former president of the United States or any official under the protection of the Secret Service. And that means figuring out who is he. Right now, Anderson, I've been talking to sources all over the government. We're not certain that they are certain that they have the identity of the gunman. I know they're trying to confirm that. Secondly, they're going to need to know, where is he from? Is he local, or did he travel far and wide to get here for this event? And then they're going to want to know, is he a left-wing violent extremist? Is he an accelerationist? Or is he, and this is not the question, one of these people who are just hearing his own voices in his head? At what point we may learn the motive is something that just makes no sense to us. We've seen that before, but they are in the very early stages of trying to figure out, do they know who this person is, and how do they start down that road?
Andrew McCabe, former FBI Deputy Director, what stands out to you about this? I mean, we had this aerial shot that gives you a sense of the location of where we believe the shooter was. And where the former president was speaking. I mean, I don't know the exact number of how many yards it was, but doesn't look that far. That was not in the security perimeter, that there was not somebody from the Secret Service already on that roof. What does that say to you? And also, for somebody to get up there, they must have cased that in advance, well in advance.
Yeah, you would certainly think so, Anderson. As you look at that overhead map, it raises many, many issues for the investigators, the FBI and their task force partners who will be peeling this apart, literally dissecting every aspect of the shooter's life.
Hey, Andrew, I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. I want to bring in our Caitlin Collins, who's standing by, who has some new information. Caitlin.
We heard from him earlier. He said he'd been trying to get in touch with former President Donald Trump. We now can confirm from a White House official that President Biden has spoken to former President Trump. The White House says that he also spoke to the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and the mayor of Butler, where this rally was being held, Bob Dandoy. He is returning to the White House, I should note, and this is something that was unscheduled, as Priscilla mentioned. And the White House says that he is going to get a briefing tonight from Homeland Security and law enforcement officials. That includes the director of the United States Secret Service that Chairman James Comer said they are going to reach out to It's also his top security advisor, and the FBI director, Chris Wray, will be part of that. Part of that briefing that he got tonight. But it is notable that former President Trump and President Biden have now spoken. We don't know anything else about what was said during that conversation, but they have been able to make contact.
All right, Caitlin Collins giving that confirmation. Andrew, I'm sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
Yeah, sure. So I was just saying the overhead map raises all kinds of issues for investigators to pursue. But to be clear, the FBI's job now is not to find faults with whatever the Secret Service did or didn't do. Their job is very simple. They want to know everything there is that can be known about this shooter, who they are, where they're from, how they got there, who they might have worked with or been directed by or conspired with or been aided by. That's job number one. And exposing those facts will greatly inform any kind of inquiry that the Secret Service conducts later to figure out if there were things that they could have or should have done differently. I think the location of that of the shooter's position opens up all kinds of possibilities. I agree with you, likely cased this positioning long in advance, which would lead you to believe that the manufacturing company that owns that cluster of buildings, whether or not they have any video surveillance in the area, if people have ever seen this person or it's ultimately attributed to him in the area. So there's all kinds of investigative avenues that leave that position opens up. Of course, once they identify where he's from and what vehicles he's connected to, there will be search warrants executed at all of those locations on all those. They'll speak to every one of his relatives, work associates, anyone who knows him. They'll take every piece of electronics that he owns or has touched or been near, and they'll download those things. They'll get onto his social media. They'll look at who he was talking to online, searches that he may have been making online. So this is a very complicated and vast process. And I'm confident that the full weight of the FBI Counterterrorism Division and all of its supporting assets like SIRG and the evidence response teams, they are working tonight, deployed to the scene. They will be going 24/7 for quite some time.
Just in terms of making an identification, Andrew, is the fastest way, taking fingerprints off his, off his corpse? Is it following the history of the weapon used? What is the best way? Assuming he doesn't have IDs on him. I'm talking about.
Sure, right. Look in his pockets first, but the weapon is probably not a super reliable indicator of identity, just because it could have been a long chain of changes in possession of that or that weapon along the way. They can run fingerprints instantly from the scene. They have a process called the quick capture machine that developed literally on the battlefields, working with special forces and our military forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. They can print him in place, instantly return whether or not he's got any sort of fingerprint record in the federal and state systems. There's other things that they can do. They can try to use dental records, things like that, but they will have this person identified, within the next few hours. Then begins the process of really peeling that life apart.
John Miller, at this hour, what stands out to you? The biggest questions you have from a sort of how could this have happened standpoint?
Well, I think the questions are going to be about what that outer perimeter was like, but I also understand as the NYPD official worked hand in glove with the Secret Service. I led the package that ran ahead of Donald Trump's motorcade in every trip he made to New York as president, without exception. I know how the Secret Service works, but the package they give to a president is one thing. The package they give to a former president is scaled down. Even the package they give to a former president who is a presidential candidate is not the same as presidential security. So in this case, they had a counter sniper team, which isn't in every case, and they were looking out for high ground. But as you see from the image on the screen, most of the high ground is very low. So they're going to have to face a lot of questions about this, but some of it may boil down to what was said before on our air, which if someone's willing to plan it out, case it, and willing to die in the process, there isn't always a way to stop it.
And Andrew, in terms of FBI, I mean, they have personnel obviously probably already there. As I think John was saying, there's going to be a lot more resources heading there right now.
That's right, Anderson. Every FBI field office has an evidence team. Those teams are typically deployed regionally, so I would expect that Pittsburgh field office is in the lead on this case. That's their territory, but they'll be receiving massive influxes of resources, personnel, equipment, all sorts of things from Philadelphia, from New York, maybe New Haven. And there's a whole host of very large, capable offices nearby. And they'll be getting folks from headquarters, whether they like it or not. They'll get headquarters folks, folks from SERG, as John mentioned before. So all those resources. There's a critical incident conference call that takes within the FBI as soon as anything like this happens. And the purpose of that call is to get the leaders of all those different divisions and areas within the FBI together on this call. The deputy director presides over it, and the decisions to deploy resources are made instantly, and people start moving as soon as that call concludes. So I'm quite confident that that's happened already.
Hey, Andrew, we've just got a new video that I want to show you. It's of the rooftop with Secret Service counter snipers on it. These are the ones who assume would have been the ones who killed the shooter. On the video, you can hear them shooting, and we're seeing this for the first time. Let's play this.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look what happened. That's a little bit old.
I want to try to re-rack that and replay that. I don't know if we can zoom in on it because it's interesting. It's you see the counter sniper. I mean, he's looking through his the on the rifle, and then seems to kind of notice something that he looks at with his own eyes as if to confirm, and then again, then quickly shoots. Andrew, I don't know if you can see this video.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
You know, it's a remarkable capture. Well, the first thing that jumps out to me, Anderson, is they, at least that sniper, and possibly I don't know if that's his spotter that's lying on the roof next to him, typically deploy as a pair, one person on the gun, the other person on just optics and directing the person on the gun. The video begins with them looking essentially in the right direction. It's almost as if you get the sense that maybe something on that rooftop had already caught their attention. And then when he raises his head off the gun, it almost seems to be in response to the first shot, like almost looking to confirm, like, did I just see what I think I saw, sort of thing. This is all speculation. We don't know. We don't have that information yet, but it is remarkable to me that he seems to be looking exactly in the right place.
Well, it's interesting because
when the shots go off.
There is, and again, this is just, these may be completely random pieces of information, but there was the eyewitness who we played the sound from a short time ago, who said that he was alerting local law enforcement and pointing Secret Service people on the roof to the location of the person he believed was the gunman before the gunman fired, which may be, again, we don't know, but if that is the case, then that might be why the counter sniper is already pointing in that location. John, or go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, you would hope and expect that if they had received a witness report like that, it would have at least gone out over the radio channel. And it's possible that the snipers got some version of that report, like, hey, we're hearing a report of something happening on a roof on your 3 o'clock or something like that. And so they may have been looking over there to kind of gather more information to see if they could spot something as well, but not having had the robust full, you have a shooter on this roof sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot to be ironed out here.
John Miller, I don't know if you can see that counter sniper video. I'm wondering if anything stands out to you about it.
Andy's got it right, which is you've got the sniper, you've got his spotter. They are getting information in their earpieces. It is possible about We're getting reports of an individual on a roof that's way on the other side. He may be looking for that in his scope when he looks up. When you hear those shots, it's entirely likely that that is the shooter's actual shots, and then the sniper, and it cuts off before a larger volley of shots, the video does. But that is probably coming from that counter sniper, taking that shooter out as they were trying to assess what is he, where is he. Now, if you go back to the map for that, you see where President Trump was, you see where the shooter was. Where the shooter was, that's a roof that slants up one way and slants down the other way. So if the shooter is crawled up the down slant, he would be out of the view of that sniper until he either stood up or crawled to the tip to take his shot. They might have been looking for him before he became visible. I think your assessment that he heard the shots, looked up, went back to his scope, and opened fire is highly likely.
I want to play the video. We've been playing pretty much an hour or so, just for those who are just joining. It starts. This is around 6:15 p.m. in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is a short minutes into former President Trump speaking at this rally when the shots began.
Oh, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hold, when you're ready, on you. Ready? Move! 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 Go! Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here, move it to the stand. Get ready. You ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good? Move. Clear. Let's go. We're clear. Come on. My shoes. Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir. I got you.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes. Okay. Watch out.
Wolf, let's go back to you.
And I understand every time I see that video, it is so scary indeed. And the thought of what potentially could have happened within a few inches away from where those bullets landed is so scary indeed. I want to go to this Randy Kay. She's joining us from just outside Trump Tower in Manhattan for us. What are you seeing over there? What are you hearing, Randy?
Well, we've been out here now for a couple of hours. We came here because we were told that they had increased police presence here just out of an abundance of caution, and they sure have. There's about a steady stream of about 8 or 9 officers here behind me. They've been making the rounds around the building. We are right out front of Trump Tower on 5th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. And of course, Trump comes here and there. He's come here when he's had to be on trial here in New York City. He's not here very often, but just out of an abundance of caution, they have increased the police presence here. There is a small crowd. To be honest with you, most of it is media, but there have been some supporters coming throughout the night. A couple of people just showed up to light some candles, perhaps trying to get some sort of vigil going. But we understand from the spokesperson for City Mayor Eric Adams that he has been briefed on this situation. He has said that his prayers go out to the former president. And this is not the only area in New York City where they are concerned about just in case. They are also beefing up the police presence in other areas of the city. Those would include City Hall, 40 Wall Street, and Foley Square. Foley Square has a history. It's known as Federal Plaza. It is a major site for protesters. Often that's where they gather. Certainly during Occupy Wall Street, that's where they gathered years ago. So that is one area that they want to keep an eye on. But as I said, they've had a steady stream here of people coming through. They've been chatting with the police officers a little bit. It's a very calm crowd here this evening, but of course they just want to be sure that everything here is there, that they are taking all the precautions that they can. There's been a permanent blockade out front of Trump Tower here since 2016, but this is different when you have actually police officers standing at the front door of Trump Tower making sure nobody gets inside. Wolf?
And as you know, Randy, I know the Secret Service, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, local law enforcement, the U.S. military, every time something like this happens, out of an abundance of caution, they invite security all over the place. They don't want to take any more chances. So we're going to see that whether in Chicago, in Milwaukee at the Republican convention, and then next month in Chicago at the Democratic convention, and all sorts of political rallies and political events all across the country. Randy, thanks very much. Anderson, back to you.
On the phone now is syndicated political columnist Selena Zito, who was at the rally. Selena, thanks for talking with us. Can you just talk a little bit about what you experienced? You realized what was going on.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So just before the president went on, I did talk to him just for a few minutes. I was set to interview him after the rally. But I think it's just interesting to note that he was very excited, you know, and sort of very happy to be in Pennsylvania. I think he recognizes the importance of this state and the importance of this rally that's going into Wisconsin. And so I was in the bumper. The bumper is that area where journalists go that is sort of surrounds the stage with the audience behind you and the president in front of you. So I was just feet from him. We had just moved to his left. Myself and two photographers from the Washington Examiner. We were just to his, I think it was his left. And I heard the pop, 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 and saw the president go down. You could see this little streak of red on base, and then there were three more shots after that. I don't know. I haven't seen much reporting because there really was no service out there. But you know, I saw him go down. And I don't think he fell down. And from my vantage point, I was maybe 3 feet from him. I don't think he fell down. I think that he went down to take cover. And immediately you saw law enforcement surround him on all sides. And he gets back up, and I can hear him say two things. Something about, I need my shoes. And then I see him lift his fist up, and people were cheering him, and then he kept saying fight, fight, fight. And then the advance man from the Trump campaign, really interesting. He laid on top of him, kept saying, stay down, don't move. And then they brought the president right past us. His hat fell down right in front of him. And then they come off.
And I think we have a picture we have a picture. I think that of you. I think this was posted on one of your accounts. That's, I assume, the advanced man. There's several people lying around you.
Yes, that's actually my daughter and my son-in-law.
Oh my gosh! So your daughter and son-in-law were there. That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, my daughter is a photojournalist. We were there. I was interviewing today. I was going to fly back to Bedminster with him and do an interview, a long form interview, stories ahead of the convention. So I had, a photographer with me, and so yeah, and it's really interesting I suspect there's a lot of journalists who feel this way. Your instinct is to keep covering it, right? Like your instinct is, like, I got to take a picture. I have to see what's happening. I have to, I have to chronicle this. But the other instinct is like, well, I better stay safe.
Yeah. It's now been a little bit more than it's been about 4.5 hours since then. How, when you're in a situation like this, there's a lot of adrenaline that kind of carries you through for a while. I don't know if that's worn off for you yet, but how do you reflect on this?
So there is this adrenaline that flows through you, and I think it's this self-protection thing. You want to protect yourself, make sure you're safe, make sure that people around you are safe. Those are those instincts that first, sort of jump at you. Right now, it's a very you dislodged from the situation. And I don't know if I'm using the right term, but you feel distracted, or not distracted, just detached. That's what I'm trying to say. Detached from it. And I suspect the emotion will kick in a day or two. But right now, I just feel very detached about it. And obviously, and we were in such, so there was about 5, maybe 7 of us journalists that were in that bumper. And they immediately, as soon as they took the president out, they grabbed us and took us back in a holding. And I think they were always, the advance were concerned that we were okay because we were right there.
Yeah.
We could have been closer.
Yeah.
And so there was also no cell service out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know any news that has happened. I just walked into my home. I live about an hour and a half from Butler, and so I haven't been able to process any of the particulars that that has come out since it's happened. We were just sequestered out. But what was fascinating to me is once they brought us out, what I saw was really sad. You saw this, when I went in, the last image I saw were 20, 30, 40,000 people. I don't know. There were a lot of people there.
Yeah.
All on a farm field. That was the last sort of images I had seen when I looked backwards. You go outside and you saw people had left their bags. Someone had left their wheelchair. Someone had dropped their phone.
Yeah.
You know that there was an evacuation there that was, that something happened, right? And people, when people leave things behind, they felt the need, they felt the pressure of the moment.
So much pandemonium and fear and anger and shock, all of it. Selena Zito, thank you so much for your time. I wish you the best in the days ahead as you begin to think about it and process all of this. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Wolf, back to you.
Anderson, Evan Perez, our justice correspondent, is getting some new video that's just coming in right now. Tell us about that, Evan.
Well, what we're about to see is some video that was shot from inside the rally, from somebody who was attending the rally. And what it does is it portrays some of the chaos as some people appear to be trying to warn that there was someone who's about to take shots, or that someone with a firearm was visible there. So look at this video and we can talk a little bit about what we're hearing.
And that's a little bit of he's going down!
Stay under there. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there. He's on the roof, buddy.
I just seen his hair go up and show up on the head.
Well, they hit anybody over there?
Did he pull up his shot?
A number of shots. No, that was him. The first 3 shots were him.
He's right there. He's right there. On the
I believe the active dispatcher are much more
And Wolf, what this does is it sort of matches some of the earlier eyewitness. We saw an eyewitness who was interviewed by a viewer there on the scene, and that person described seeing this alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, on that roof and trying to get the attention of law enforcement. You can hear in that video just now, there is someone who is an attendee there who you could hear some of the sounds of them trying to get the attention of someone, saying you could see someone on the roof, and then you hear the shots ring out, and then you hear the description, the witnesses describing how the counter snipers from the Secret Service, we now know that they are the ones that fired the shots that killed the suspected gunman who fired the shots in the direction of the former president. So you're hearing in that video, again, is a harrowing detail, the chaos, really, as people clearly saw, even as this was happening, and we're trying to figure out, trying to draw attention. And obviously none of that could prevent those initial shots from coming from the suspected shooter. The Secret Service obviously took action very, very quickly and killed him before there could be injured. Unfortunately, it appears that there were other injuries. Another person died there at the scene. So, Wolf, this is an investigation that now is going to be focused on that scene right there in that building, which is just, again, about a football field and a half distance from where the former president, Donald Trump, was speaking. Wolf?
Evan Perez, thank you very much for sharing that video with our viewers. Very much. Right now, I want to bring in the former U.S. Secret Service agent, Jonathan Wackrow, and former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. To you, thanks very much for joining us. So walk us through what to anticipate. Andrew, let's start with you right now. I take it the FBI will be in charge of this investigation?
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. And I think they've made a public announcement to that effect as well already. So they are really ramping up. I'm quite confident that resources have already been deployed, that evidence response teams and personnel and counterterrorism investigators from all of the regional field offices and some from headquarters are heading towards Pittsburgh right now. There's a whole process in place to enable that deployment to take place instantly. They will be focusing obviously on identifying the shooter, and once he's identified, peeling back every aspect of his life to understand everything about him, where he's from, how he got there, why he may have done this, how he armed himself, and crucially, whether or not he knew, whether or not he worked on this plan with anyone else, whether anyone else knew he was going to do this, whether they supported him or directed him or helped him in any way. They want to completely find all of those folks. There will be search warrants executed, I would expect, within the next 24 hours. His social media accounts, once identified, will be completely coursed through for every possible communication. His electronics devices will all be searched as well. So that's a very broad scope investigation that will take some time. But I have to say, Wolf, in regards to the video that we just saw, tells us two really important things. I think one, how incredibly dangerous the situation was. You literally have people walking along the walls of that building as there is a shooter firing from the roof. And had he tried to escape and run away, you never know how many innocent bystanders could have been hurt. And secondly, that video shows us just how easy it is to get to that structure. There's people all around it. They're walking dogs, walking by, drinks in their hands. So it's really remarkable that a structure in that close of proximity with with presumably line of sight access to the stage was pretty open and available to the public. I'm sure that's something that the Secret Service will be kind of doing as they go through this to determine whether they may should have done things differently in that regard.
Right. I'm sure they're going to look at that to make sure that they learn from this horrible situation to make sure it doesn't happen again. Former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow is with us. So, Jonathan, as you look at what we know right now, that the shooter was atop the rooftop that was basically overlooking where Trump was speaking from this rally right there, and no one either prevented that shooter from showing up there or stopped him from shooting. It looks like there was a major blunder somewhere along the line. I wonder if you agree.
Well, Wolf, anytime you have a shooter within proximity that's at an elevated position, that gives them an advantage, and that is something that will come during this investigation. The Secret Service, along with the FBI and other investigators, to understand how did this individual get to that location. Once he was up on that elevated position and started firing, it did appear just from the sound that, and from some eyewitness reports, law enforcement, the Secret Service, the counter sniper team did engage, realize the threat almost immediately. But we have to understand what were the precipitating actions that this shooter took. How were they able to walk with presumably a long gun to get up onto a building, to get into a position to launch this attack, absent of enforcement and Secret Service agents not that. Now, I will say that this building does appear to be outside of the secure perimeter. So this is an area. This is a long-range threat. The Secret Service is always concerned about those long-range threats. That's why they have the tactical asset of the counter sniper team. But there are a lot of questions that need to be asked. One of which is, was there any type of pre-attack surveillance? You have to remember, Wolf, as we're looking at the map, the overview of this site, what we're not gaining is what type of environmental manipulation did the Secret Service and the security plan play with, to block line of sight. Typically, you'll see locking vehicles. You can see like aerial lights, media equipment. Secret Service agent, I love to take big satellite trucks and use those media trucks to block line of sight. So was this attacker looking at the build out of the security plan over time, found a vulnerability, and then was able to launch this attack? All of the Wolf will come out during the investigation in the forthcoming days.
All right, Jonathan Wackrow and former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, to both of you, thank you very, very, very much. Anderson.
It is just 11 p.m. in the wake of an assassination attempt on Donald Trump at his final pre-convention rally in Western Pennsylvania. The gunman is dead. A rally spectator is also dead. 2 others we now know are critically wounded. The fear, but okay. But this is new video from the scene. I want you to see and hear it all.
And look what happened to us, honey. Probably 20 people. And you know, that's a little bit. He's going down!
Stay under here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there. He's on the roof, buddy.
He's dead. I just seen hair walk. They shot him in the head.
Well, if he hit anybody over there.
Did he pull up a shot?
A number of shots.
I thought that was us.
No, that was him. The first 2 shots were him.
He's on the roof right there. He's right there on the roof. Just on the other side of the
And there's also a new video of the U.S. Secret Service counter sniper with apparent gunman out. On it, you will first hear the former president's, then the shots that hit him, and then the shot that apparently killed the sniper. Listen.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
And this is the same video in slow motion. You can see the Secret Service counter sniper's weapon and the agent's head pick up. Now here's how it all looked on stage from the moment of the first shots to when former President Trump was taken from the stage to a local hospital.
No, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hold, when you're ready, on you. Ready? Move! Up, move! Go! Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stand. You ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move? Good to move. Clear. We're clear. Let's move. We're clear. Come on. Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir. I got you.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold on, your head.
So we got to move to the car. Move to the car.
Let me get my shoes.
Watch out.
President Biden made a brief statement tonight decrying what happened. He also spoke to Mr. Trump and is returning to the White House. This is Air Force One, the smaller version, waiting at Dover Air Force Base. The FBI is now in charge of the investigation. Seniors Caitlin Collins and Abby Phillip are here in New York. Caitlin, I know you've been talking to people all throughout the night. What are you hearing now?
Yeah, obviously Donald Trump, immediately after you see that moment on stage where the agent grabbed his hat, his shoe was left on stage, according to the Washington Post. You can see the bloody towel. He was taken to Butler Memorial Hospital, not far from where he's standing right on stage. That is where he was treated by doctors and seen. Obviously, he later posted and confirmed that the bullet did indeed graze his ear, and he immediately felt the blood. You can see it in that video that you just showed there. What we're told is that he's been on the phone with immediate family members. A lot of people have not been able to get through to him that have been trying to talk to him. He's been surrounded by, obviously, his campaign team and the entire apparatus that really had spent today focused on what tomorrow is going to look like in this week in Milwaukee. He is still scheduled to the Republican convention as it was planned. Nothing has changed based on what we've heard so far. It remains to be seen if we'll actually hear from him on camera. You would imagine he would want to. I talked to people who were there. They said that you see how Trump was exiting the stage. He mouthed the word fight to his supporters a few times. He had a similarly kind of defiant look on his face as he got into his motorcade and did that one more time before he was taken to the hospital. He did speak to President Biden tonight. President Biden had been trying to get in touch with him and had only spoken to his doctors so far. But just to look back on this moment, when you talk to people who know Donald Trump and having covered him since he was a candidate before he became president the first time, every president fears for their security. Every presidential candidate does who gets Secret Service protection. Donald Trump has had it for almost a decade now, if you can believe it, since November 2015. He loves his Secret Service agents. They feel similarly about him. He's long feared, though, an attempt on his life. He has been hyper fixated on security and preparations and what it looks like. I mean, you go into a Trump rally, not many politicians have events like this where there are this many people who go in. I've been to dozens of them. Our camera crews go and set up ahead of time. Then they have to leave. The Secret Service sweeps the entire area, dogs, everything. They look through the bleachers. They look at the seats. And then you have to exit the facility and then re-enter. You go through magnetometers. The Secret Service is there. And I think that has really been one of the biggest takeaways that I've heard from people tonight is asking how this could happen. All of these people who have been at a Trump rally and the idea that a shooter could be on a rooftop within the line of sight of the former president and presumptive Republican nominee has stunned so many of them. And we talk a lot about the frivolous investigations that happen on Capitol Hill. House Speaker Mike Johnson, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, both making clear tonight that they want to hear from the Secret Service on what went wrong.
I mean, you look at the location, you look at that map. I've heard it's about 150 yards. I've just read that, but I don't know if that's confirmed. But I mean, it's incredible to think that rooftop wasn't secured.
Can I say one more thing? Just on the timeline here, he was about 10 minutes into his remarks. One thing that they have done at his rallies this time around that they did not do when he was in the White House previously is they put up these huge screens on each side of him where he can pull up charts or polls or whatever. He was that's what he's looking at right there while he's looking to his right. He was asking his team to put a chart up. And I mean, the fact that inches matter here, I think says a lot. The fact that he turned his head and was looking at this chart that was on his right side. Sorry, Abby.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this is one of those situations where everything will change after this. I mean, we've been warning, frankly, for years about the rising threat of political violence. We are at that moment. It is, and for all of the candidates, for President Biden, for President Trump, I'm seeing a lot of conversation right now about whether President Biden will authorize RFK Jr. to have Secret Service protection, seeing calls from Democrats and Republicans, Colorado Governor Jared Polis, the Texas Senator Ted Cruz, both of them, that he should. Everything will change from this point forward because this is a representation of something happening in this country that is now out of control. It's already gone past that point. The danger is always there for presidential candidates, but when you've crossed the line, I think it becomes incredibly apparent that any more chances. And I think we'll see the RNC this week. I mean, they've said everything is going to go as planned, but I cannot imagine that right now everything is not being reevaluated about the scope and the scale of the security around that event. And not to mention, former President Trump also has to announce his vice president. That is an announcement that's going to happen. And whoever that person is going to be immediately enveloped by an enormous amount of security. That was already going to happen. It's going to be, I think, exacerbated now.
And we have seen political violence after Ronald Reagan's attempted assassination. Steve Scalise, the intruder to kill Nancy Pelosi or do something to Nancy Pelosi, and everyone was killing her husband. There were people who made fun of the Pelosi's after that attack on one side of the political aisle. It remains to be seen what the political response to this is by Republicans.
I do think there's fear, though, Anderson, that, I mean, obviously on both sides about what the political implications are, but we can't get ahead of ourselves here. I mean, we do not know how this is all going to play out in the minds of voters. I will say, though, that Democrats have been making this argument that, democracy is on the line. And Republicans are now saying that is the rhetoric that incited this. We have no idea. We don't know who this person is, what their motives are. On all sides, I mean, I think there should be probably a reevaluation of all the rhetoric, of the tone of this campaign going forward. Will there be? I'm not so sure, because I think both sides are going to try to find, to use this to their political advantage, and the stakes really gotten even higher.
But I will say, we've talked so much about the top of the ticket and what that looks like and who's the nominee and what that looks like. President Biden and President Trump had a phone call tonight. I mean, that has never happened between the two of them. And so obviously they've been on debate stages. We've all seen the political moments, but the fact that they did have that phone call tonight. And in Donald Trump's statement tonight, he offered his condolences to the rally goer who was killed tonight and to the other person who was critically injured. We've now learned a second person was also critically injured. And obviously you saw President Biden come out pretty quickly early on before he had left Rehoboth to come out and say that he had tried to get in touch with Trump. Those are moments that are also, I think, important for as we look at what this political context is, regardless of what others are saying on Twitter and online and in the coming days. It is a moment to see them at least having that phone call.
And just as you're saying that, I mean, I think about this event, I think about January 6th, and the thing that continues to happen is that when political violence happens, it's innocent people or regular people who are impacted. There was someone killed today who just was going to a political rally. 2 people who are being described as critically injured. There are people who were there with their children, their families, their wives, their husbands. This is the consequence of all of this. And the target might have been former President Trump, but just regular people who are trying to exercise politically are losing their lives in moments like this. And it's just so sobering for us to think about tonight.
Yeah. Tim Naftali, presidential historian. I mean, I don't know that it will change anything about rhetoric because already people on various sides are, seeing this differently.
Well, one would hope, that in a moment like this one hopes for something good to come out of it, right? And what would be good in a dark night like this is for opinion makers, political opinion makers, to recognize that the two parties may disagree, but we're all part of the same political community. And we bear a responsibility for setting an example so that we do not trigger people into attacking our democracy by trying to eliminate an option, a choice. And so one can only hope that not just tonight, but tomorrow and during the 2 conventions, that we see a recognition that enough is enough, the rhetoric's too heated, the pot is on the stove and the water is boiling. We have to dial it down.
Wolf, let's go back to you.
Good point, indeed, from Tim Naftali. Let's hope that they could dial it down. That rhetoric is very, very heated. Anderson, I want to go to CNN's Evan Perez right now. He's got some new reporting on the deceased gunman. What are you learning, Evan?
Well, Wolf, the work now that the FBI is doing is to verify the identity of this person. They believe they know who it is. One of the questions that I think that is on everyone's mind is obviously we're now at about almost 5 hours after this event, and we don't yet have an official name, a name from law enforcement of the name of the person who attempted, from what we can tell, an attempted assassination on the former president. So that is one of the questions right now that is obviously on everyone's mind. What we're told is that the alleged shooter, the suspected shooter, wasn't carrying identification on them, and so that's adding to some of the extra work that law enforcement has to do to try to verify and make sure they know who this person is, and of course the work that now begins to try to identify what the motivation is. I know, I think for people online, sometimes everyone wants to jump to the conclusions of what they think they see based on what the videos are showing and so on. But law enforcement moves a little more methodically. They need to know, they need to preserve the evidence, and they also need to get search warrants. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes by the FBI to try to make sure they understand exactly what happened here and to explain to the public exactly how this went down. And so that's the work that's going on behind the scenes. Again, we're told right now they know who this person is, or they believe they know who this person is that attempted to fire those shots against, at the former president at that rally. But the work being done now is to make sure everything to make sure that they know exactly what they know. Wolf?
Evan, stand by. We'll get back to you. I want to go to John Miller right now. He's getting some more information as well. What are you learning, John?
Well, we are told that the FBI has the identity, what they believe to be the identity of the suspected shooter. He's a young man, approximately 20 years old, who apparently grew up and lives in a Pennsylvania town, not terribly far away. And they are in the process of going through that. We are not going to be going with any further information about him until they are finished confirming that they have the right suspect or put that name out. But they're very confident that they have identified who he is as a 20-year-old Pennsylvania man.
We'll wait and see. Presumably, it won't take very long for them to make public the name of this individual and some more information about this individual. I thought it was interesting, John, and I want to get your reaction. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just issued a statement vowing there will be what he calls a full investigation of this assassination attempt in the House of Representatives. He says this: the American people deserve to know the truth. We will have Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle and other appropriate officials from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI appear for a hearing before our committee ASAP. I know there's going to be a full investigation by the FBI as well. So give us a sense. Who goes first, the FBI, the House of Representatives? How do you see this unfolding?
Well, speaking as a former member of law enforcement, to drag this at an early stage into the political arena, as is being suggested by dragging the Secret Service director before a House committee, even as the facts are still being gathered, while the criminal matter is still at its earliest stages, before the comprehensive investigation has been launched into what happened, strikes me as pure politics and the kind of thing that actually interferes with the more important job of getting the real answers, capturing it as evidence that is presentable and collected the right way without the color of politics affecting it.
Yeah, they need a full-scale investigation, but they clearly don't need it to be political. Good point indeed, John. Thank you very, very much. Anderson, back to you.
Wolf, as you know, 3 former presidents have weighed in tonight. This from former President Clinton. I'm quoting: violence has no place in America, especially in our political process. Hillary and I are thankful that President Trump is safe, heartbroken for all those affected by the attack at today's rally in Pennsylvania, and grateful for the swift action of the U.S. Secret Service. From former President George W. Bush, quoting: Laura and I are grateful that President Trump is safe following the cowardly attack on his life, and we commend the men and women of the Secret Service for their speedy response. And this from former President Obama: there is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. Back with Scott Jennings, Van Jones, and Tim Naftali. Van, we haven't heard from you this evening. What are your thoughts right now?
I'm so glad that Donald Trump is alive. I'm so glad. I'm so glad he's alive. I'm so glad his family is not having to bury a father and a grandfather. And this is a moment that I think people who want to defeat him remind ourselves, you can defeat him with ballots. You don't need bullets. You don't need vitriol. You don't need any of this stuff. This is a time when we can get off of this train. I've been hearing from people who are scared tonight. They're scared that this is the beginning of some new tit-for-tat violence, that we're spiraling away from each other, And I think it's time for us to listen. You know, Gabby Giffords was shot in 2011, Democratic Congresswoman. Steve Scalise got shot 2017. We kept ratcheting it up. Gretchen Whitmer was almost kidnapped in 2020, kept ratcheting it up. She's a Democrat. Paul Pelosi attacked with a hammer, 2022. More violence. We keep ratcheting it up. And now Donald Trump, almost assassinated, comes within a quarter of an inch of being assassinated in 2024. This is not the way. If you have somebody in your life who you've been mad at, who votes different from you, or prays different, or loves different, or looks different, text them tonight. Text them tonight. Call them. This should be a wake-up call for everybody. We got to put our arms around each other. We can vote against each other. We don't have to hate each other. And if you don't understand tonight that we could have lost a leader who's important to half the country, who's beloved by half this country, and you would have had half this country maybe feeling the need to shoot back. And where would we be? Where would we be? So this is the moment for everybody to look in the mirror. I am so glad that Donald Trump is alive tonight.
Scott Jennings?
Yeah, I just want to echo much of what Van just said because, you know, I was very angry when I saw this news earlier. I wasn't really angry as a Republican, though. I was angry as an American because I view this as a direct attack on our democracy. And regardless of who you support or who you don't like or who you like, we're all in the democracy together. And whether you like it or not, Donald Trump is the most likely next president of the United States, according to the polls right now. He is an important person in our civic life and in our political affairs. So I view this as a direct attack on our democracy. It makes me angry for him, for his family, for everyone that was at that rally. It makes me angry for everyone who is an active participant in our politics. And I think, to echo what Van said, the way you overcome extremism and the way you overcome people who would commit violent acts is by participating more in our democracy, by using speech appropriately, by voting, by doing the things that make our democracy healthy and vibrant, and stop doing the things that make it the opposite, because that's where we are right now. We're in the opposite place. But we are at a moment where we can get off the train, as Van said, and get on a path that would make this democracy far healthier than it is right now. Whoever wins this election, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, our country is not going to come to an end. Our Constitution is not going to be destroyed. We are not going to see things dissolve in this country. We have elections every 2 and 4 years. The country will not end. Get out and participate. Do what you do. Support your candidate. But ballots and speech are the way forward, not violence, not bullets, and not telling your friends and neighbors that our country is going to come to an end. That has to stop.
Tim Naphtali?
Only cowards use bullets to settle political disputes. Cowards, however, can undermine a country. And tonight, as both Van and Scott have mentioned, we came very close to something that would have set us on a very dangerous path. We're still on a dangerous path. We're in a very fragile moment in our history. And this is a time for really deep thinking on the part of influencers and opinion makers. I've already seen on social media lurid conspiracy theories about what happened and what might have happened today. We do need to learn more about what went wrong, but we should remember that the former president himself thanked the Secret Service for doing what it could to save his life, to protect him. This is a time to be very careful about what we say about our institutions. This is a time to stop hating each other. This is a time to stop allowing poison to explain things that are difficult to understand. I'm not sure how you do that as a country, but I do know that there are a lot of folks out there that have a lot of people who listen to them. And if there were ever a time in our modern history for those who shape opinion to dial it down, to take a deep breath and understand that our union, our community is more important than anything else. And that poison and hatred at this moment is not a sign of patriotism, however devoted you are to one side or another.
It's President Biden boarding Air Force One at Dover Air Force Base. He was in Delaware when this occurred. He's heading back to Washington, D.C. Wolf, let's go back to you.
He'll be flying to Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, then taking his motorcade to the White House. This is a major decision on his part. He wants to be at the White House for full briefings right now on what happened. Jamie, is there any indication, and you've been getting a lot of monitoring a lot of reaction from partisans on both sides, that the angry rhetoric that we've been hearing from both sides is going to calm down?
Well, if you look at social media, it's not calming down at all. But I think that tonight, as we've heard from certainly people on our air from both sides of the political spectrum, that's what everybody wants. And certainly, we heard from former presidents, Democrats, Republicans asking for that. I was just reading former Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, as one whose family has been the victim of political violence, I know firsthand that political violence of any kind has no place in our society. I thank God the former President Trump is safe. So hopefully expressions like that will win the day, but we are in very polarized times.
Yeah, and I thank God that former President Trump is safe as well. Do you want to make a quick point?
Well, I was just going to go back to what Caitlin and Jeff Zeleny are reporting about Trump's fear of something happening to him at an event like this, which is understandable for anybody who is in that level of scrutiny, and anybody running for president, no matter who you are. One of the things that is really striking, I'm looking at Chris LaCivita, who's one of the people running Donald Trump's campaign, and he has a photo up, one of the remarkable photos taken of this moment, where Donald Trump has his hand, his fist up, and there's an American flag behind him. And LaCivita says, now this is some real Iwo Jima shit right here. And it was really striking to me because it made me think about that moment when the Secret Service had him on the ground. And because the microphone was still on, we heard him saying when they were getting him up, first of all, he was looking for his shoe. And then we heard him say, wait. He is he's been in television and in the public eye for so long that his instinct was not to have the imagery of him on the ground and then being whisked off. I know that, Jamie, there's some questions about whether just from a security standpoint that was protocol, but just from the political imagery of it all, the fact that he had the presence of mind to want to say fight, to put up his fist, and to have those images be the ones that are there, not just for today, not just for the rest of this campaign, but for history, is really striking.
Striking indeed. We're getting word, by the way, from authorities in Butler, Pennsylvania, where this rally was taking place, about a press briefing to occur in about 15 minutes or so from now, maybe even sooner, with the FBI and Secret Service taking part in this upcoming press briefing. We will, of course, bring it to you live once it happens. And Pamela Brown, I know you're working your sources. You're getting a lot of reaction. What else are you hearing?
Yeah, we're also just hearing from the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro, who says that former President Trump has now left the Butler area. So he tweeted that out. Wolf, I was just going back and looking at what officials have said. The FBI director, for example, Christopher Wray, and the warnings from them. And just in December 23rd, it was December of 2023, he said, domestic terrorism probes have more than doubled since the spring of 2020. You have law enforcement officials have been raising the alarm about this concern. Of course, we're still learning more about this gunman and his motives. Of course, one might assume it was political. There's still more to learn. But I can tell you, Wolf, in talking to my sources, this is what happened today is exactly what they have been fearful of, what they have been so concerned of. Why you had the FBI director, Christopher Wray, sounding the alarm about how much domestic terrorism has increased, and the concern about lone actors that are hard to identify. It's hard to intervene and to stop them before something like what happened today happened, right? And in this case, as we heard from John Miller, from what authorities think is the government, from what they know now. Keeping it vague, but someone who's 20 years old, he grew up around the area, right? Young person, goes there today and, almost changed the course of history, almost killed the former president. I mean, let's just take a step back and think about that, right?
Another
It's
inch in one direction, that bullet could have gone through his skull.
I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say remarkable. I mean, it's horrific. It's a tragedy. What happened today? You had a spectator who, probably woke up today excited to go to this Trump rally, participate in the democratic process, who lost his or her life. You have two others critically wounded. This is a really sad day for this country, and I think we are all still processing what this means and the change that this means for the future, as well as Abby eloquently talked about earlier.
And as I'm sure you and I remember, during testimony before Congress, the FBI, the Secret Service, and other law enforcement agencies have all said their greatest fear right now seems to be this lone actor, this lone individual who, for whatever crazy reason, decides to do something like this.
That's right. And I remember I did a sit-down interview with the Sergeant at Arms for the Senate. And she told me this was just a couple of years ago, but I've heard this consistently since. The political rhetoric was, in her view, causing an uptick in threats to members of Congress. And she was very concerned about that. And she was sounding the alarm about this. This was after January 6th. And sources I talked to in the law enforcement community say that concern has just increased. It is, and look, we still have a few months until November, and it's not like November, that concern is just going to go away either, right? We are in a pivotal moment in this country. And I think right now what happened today is a reminder of that and the need to tone it down.
And we'll be learning a lot more in the next few minutes when this briefing takes place with the FBI and Secret Service and others. They'll be briefing on what they know right now, and what they know right now may be different than what they know 24 hours from now. But we'll, of course, have live coverage of that. That's coming up as we await for this press briefing. It'll be very important. We'll have live coverage right here on CNN. Caitlin Collins has some new reporting, and she's joining us right now with Abby Phillip. Caitlin?
Yeah, well, obviously, the moment that you see there, the people who surrounded Donald Trump immediately as these shots were going off were his Secret Service agents. They accompany him everywhere he goes, whether it is a political event or to his private clubs. They are always there. They have been since November of 2015 when he was a candidate and he first got Secret Service protection. Obviously, as Abby referenced earlier, not all candidates get Secret Service protection, but the ones who warrant it certainly do. And there's a threshold for that.
And former presidents do as well.
And former presidents do as well. And of course, he is a candidate now, so he enjoys it. And there's been this thing kind of populating online tonight as we are watching this, where there's a rumor of people claiming that Trump has been denied requests to amplify his Secret Service. I am actually told that is not true. I am told by a source familiar that Donald Trump's Secret Service protection was recently strengthened, actually, which speaks to, one, it's not clear if that was because of any threats or anything like that, or simply because of the nature that he is set to formally this week become the presumptive Republican nominee. And then, of course, as we head into the next 4 months until November, of what that looks like. But it does speak to what we are seeing tonight and the big questions that are going to come out of this, which is the Secret Service and the protection here, and the fact that this person was able to scale a roof within the vicinity of the former president of the United States and fire these shots. And, luckily he is okay and safe, but obviously that is something not to be taken for granted.
Well, already, I mean, there are those who believe the federal government has been weaponized against him, that the FBI, was going to try to kill him at the search at Mar-a-Lago. This certainly feeds into those who believe that sort of thing.
Well, and we're seeing rhetoric like that tonight from people like Senator J.D. Vance, who is talking about the efforts to go after Donald Trump pretty quickly after all of this happened. I expect we'll see that to continue in the coming days. But for Trump and his Secret Service, I do want to be clear. He loves his Secret Service agents. Every president, I think, obviously has concerns for their safety, rightfully so, as we are watching play out tonight. But Donald Trump has always had a good relationship with his Secret Service.
The man in the glasses there is the one who was sitting right behind him during the trial in New York, I recall.
Yeah, and they're always with him. I mean, and often this was the same case when President Biden returned to the White House. They have similar agents. Obviously, there's a big coterie of agents that travel with him anywhere. If you're a reporter and you're out on the South Lawn with the president when he's exiting the Oval Office, there's two standing right in front of you, there's two behind you, there's two over there. And that's when you're on the White House premise. There's also snipers, the counter snipers on the roof to look out as well. I mean, obviously, any reporter or photographer, anyone who's ever been around a president sees the Secret Service immediately. But it is notable tonight, this new reporting that Donald Trump's Secret Service protection was recently strengthened because it speaks to, one, conspiracies that are already circulating online, which should be ignored and obviously corrected, but two, just the nature of the gravity of this campaign and how it's been playing out, and the fact that he does have more agents actually around him right now.
And Trump, it's based on the threat level. So in large part, and Trump had a high level of threat around him. So it should not be surprising to people that the protection of Secret Service, especially as he's about to be officially the nominee, is, and this idea that suddenly it be peeled back arbitrarily is just not how it works. The Secret Service, they take their seriously. Trump is both a candidate and a former president. Secret Service protection in both cases. And as Caitlin Grimes, there are people who have been with him for a long time, who are around him, who he trusts, the people who are the closest physically to the president, he needs to trust. And that he needs to know on a very deeply personal level, because they are so close to him at all moments of his life. And so, watching this play out as what's being on the screen, they are people who know to listen to him. They paused when he went to address the crowd. It's really an extraordinary moment, Anderson, about listening to that crowd roar back at Trump at such time. I mean, are at risk in that moment. And they responded to him at that time. And I think that that's going to go down those iconic moments in American history when we look back on this. I don't think we've really seen anything quite like
I mean, it shows you his skill and his knowledge of it. I mean, it is instinctive understanding of the importance of and moments, and he did not want that image of him being hushed. He wanted it to be, taking a moment to fist in the air, say fight, fight, fight.
I mean, Donald Trump is a politician, obviously, regardless if you like him or do not like him, that understands his supporters and his base better than anyone. And to take that moment, I mean, Trump is probably his crowds, and he's interacting with his supporters and feeding off of them, and he will test lines out on them and see what's popular, what's not. We're in the middle of the vice presidential pick that he's expected to make it, and the next to listen when people come out on stage. Did they get a big round of applause? How do they resonate with his supporters? And so, I mean, to see that moment, that very Donald Trump, that moment to first, before the stage, look around and mouth a word of support to his supporters.
I have been stunned, though, by watching that crowd off stage. People had been shot. Someone was shot based on these eyewitnesses in the head, in the middle of that crowd. And people, some of them cowered, but many of them stood there relatively calmly. It's really outrageous to watch what played out just a few hours ago.
Wolf, let's go back to you.
And we're waiting to hear directly from officials in Butler, Pennsylvania, where this rally was taking place. So we'll be hearing from Pennsylvania State Police, Butler Township Police Department, the FBI, and the Service, and less than 5 minutes or so from now. Meantime, I want to talk to Jonathan Wackrow and Evan Perez of what to expect next in this investigation. Jonathan, you're a former Secret Service agent. What do you expect?
Well, Wolf, listen, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Specific, why was there a line of sight vulnerability? How could this individual to an elevated building without being identified by law enforcement on the outer perimeter? So the investigation is going to start answering some of those, but we need to get answers quickly because there need to be protocols changed at the Secret Service, especially as we're entering in this heightened campaign season where there are outdoor multiple outs that will be held at RNC and then leading up into the DNC and all the way through the election day. So right now it is how this threat materialized and what type of mitigates to be put into place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. I mean, we came millimeters away from losing former President Trump to assassination. That cannot happen ever again. Oftentimes you've heard me say that protocols in the Secret Service are born out of blood. This could be one of those. Seminal moments for the Secret Service where they ensure that in that 300 the secure perimeter and nations perimeter, that long distance threat that may need to be addressed. Wolf.
Everything about what happened to make sure it never happens again. This briefing to begin momentarily. A local law enforcement, Pennsylvania State Police, the FBI, and we presumably will be learning more details about what's going on right now. The American public, indeed the world, has a right to know what's going on.
That's right, Wolf. One of the, I think is moving, perhaps giving law enforcement to move a little bit more cautiously, is that they do have some basic law enforcement work to verify the identity of this suspected. Now they have Miller reported earlier. They have a very good idea of who it is, but the person was not identification at the scene, and so one of the first things that happens is the FBI working with the U.S. Attorney's Office there in Pittsburgh. They're working to get search warrants issued to make sure that they can do searches, gather evidence, verify what they have on this person, just to try to start building a case about the motivation, where they acquired the firearm, how long have they been working on this, and whether they left behind any kind of record, any that might explain exactly what happened here. Those are the things. You're going to have hundreds of agents, some of them coming from Quantico here in Virginia. They're on their way to the Pittsburgh area where this right happened, north of Pittsburgh. That's where they're going, and so some of the police work is now underway. I don't know how much they're going to be able to tell us at this press briefing in the next. I believe in the next hour or next few minutes that they're setting up for. We do know that a lot of police work is already underway. And so it is stuff that they just can't tell us about yet because that has to be done through the courts. And of course, they have the evidence fresh there at the scene. Of course, some of the witness statements are also be very important as part of this, Wolf.
Interesting, very interesting indeed. And Dana Bash, you're getting new information that former President Trump's Secret Service protection was recently expanded. Is that right?
Yes, I was told by a source familiar with the Secret Service situation in and around Donald Trump that recently the U.S. Secret Service has been adding protection. Asked if that was because of a specific threat. And the answer I got was not to directly answer, except to say that it wasn't just typical protocol for a presidential candidate or president.
I wonder,
that was the reason.
I want to ask Jonathan Wackler, the agent, if he's heard the same thing, that in recent times, Secret Service Trump was strengthened.
Yeah, well, and actually, yes, I actually have heard that it has been bolstered, but that's actually the natural course of expansion of protection for presidential candidates. The closer that they come to, becoming the nominee, the more Secret Service assets are put towards that specific detail, really culminating, to the highest point around the the actual convention, and then the addition of their running mate as well just also expands the Secret Service detail around the primary candidate. So what we're seeing here is we actually saw tactical assets that have been applied. We see more intelligence, more post-standers. So the Secret Service naturally is adding more. It doesn't necessarily mean it's in response to a specific threat. What it is in response to is rising public, the public persona. The closer that the political activity, or the more the political activity gathers steam, the more assets are required to again build out that comprehensive security program for not only the former president but also the Republican candidate.
And Jonathan, can we assume that Secret Service protection has been strengthened at the same time for President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris?
Well, it's a little bit of a different structure, Wolf, with when you have a sitting president and a sitting vice president. Their structures are slightly different than former presidents and presidential candidates who are not in office. But you're coming very close to having a majority of those assets still applied to former President Trump as the Republican nominee. So it's coming very close, but there is a nuanced difference, and I don't want to get too much into the Secret Service structure and how it bifurcates from the presidential and vice presidential protection structure compared to nominees. But I will say it mirrors very closely, Wolf.
And can we assume that whoever Donald Trump names as his vice presidential running mate, we expect him to do that in the next day or two or so, will immediately get Secret Service protection?
I think under the current situation, the answer is yes. And I would not be surprised if the Secret Service has already reached out to all potential vice presidential candidate nominees to let them know in advance what the protocol would be to stand up that protective structure almost immediately upon announcement.
And as we look at the site of the upcoming briefing in Butler, Pennsylvania, there you can see where the briefers will be speaking to reporters and indeed to the country as a whole. We've just received a statement from the Pennsylvania governor, Governor Josh Shapiro. I want to read a portion of it right now. Under the protection of U.S. Secret Service and with the assistance of the Pennsylvania State Police, former President Trump has now left the Butler area. Lori and I are thankful that his team reports that he is fine, and we continue to wish him a full and speedy recovery. I think I speak for all of us when we say we also wish him a full and speedy recovery right now. And Pamela Brown, I know you're getting more reaction as well. What else are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm just texting and trying to call sources as well. I think everyone's anxiously awaiting this press conference, Wolf, that's coming up really any minute now. There is a lot of shock, frankly, among my sources, law enforcement officials, about how this happened. We've been talking a lot about it, but from the information we have, where that gunman was compared to where Donald Trump was on stage was only about 500 feet, and we know the gunman was on that elevated surface. How that happened is still, people just can't believe it, right? How did that happen?
All right, hold on a second. Yep. The news conference is beginning right now. Let's go to Butler, Pennsylvania.
Is everyone ready? I'm ready. All right. So my name is Kevin Rojek. That's R-O-J-E-K. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI Pittsburgh field office. The first thing I want to say is that the FBI stands with the people of Butler County in Western Pennsylvania, and our hearts go out to the victims of this heinous act which occurred today. This is our community, and I wanted to let the public know that the FBI has deployed a number of our resources, including investigative agents, our evidence response team, bomb technicians, and we have additional resources coming from other field offices, as well as from FBI headquarters, including our evidence response from Quantico, Virginia. We have intelligence analysts as well, working from our field office in Pittsburgh, working feverishly to attempt to identify the individual who did this and any motives behind why this was done. Right now, we need the public's help. Anyone who was on scene, who saw anything, who identified any information, please report that to the FBI using either the phone number 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at fbi.gov/Butler. This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well. Again, at this time, we are not prepared to identify who the shooter is. We are close to that identification, and as soon as we are 100% confident in who that individual is, we will share it with the press. With that being said, also, we do not currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify what that motive was. At this time, I'm going to turn over the podium to Colonel Chris Paris from the Pennsylvania State Police.
Thank you very much. My name is Colonel Chris Paris, P-A-R-I-S, Commissioner of Pennsylvania State Police. I would just like to say that the State Police have been in regular contact with the Governor's office, and the full support and assets of the entire agency are behind the FBI and our other federal and municipal partners to assist with this investigation. The thoughts and prayers of the Pennsylvania State Police are likewise with the victims of this terrible act. We are prepared to support this investigation in any way, shape, or form, and we stand ready to participate in a full, fair, and competent and thorough investigation. To give you an operational rundown, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, is behind me, and he will discuss the operational portion that's being conducted by the Pennsylvania State Police. Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
Good evening. So let me describe for you a little bit about the scene that we have over there. As you know, there was a grandstand, a very large area, a lot of people there when this all unfolded. The former president had come out and begun to speak shortly after 6 o'clock this evening, and within about 10 to 15 minutes, a number of sounds were heard, and it became apparent that shots were being fired in that direction. It was a chaotic scene. Law enforcement, I believe, acted heroically, quickly identifying and neutralizing the threat, as well as responding to assist the various victims. PSP had a significant presence on the scene along with all of our federal partners at the time of the shooting. We have since enhanced that presence significantly, bringing in resources from all over the Commonwealth to ensure that we have a speedy, thorough investigation. We are working very closely with the FBI as we work through this. As you can imagine, because of the variety of crimes that have been committed, some are under federal jurisdiction, some are under state jurisdiction. And so, we're working through all of that, not an issue at all. We work seamlessly, but the FBI has maintained the lead on the attempted assassination. PSP will take the lead on the homicide and the shootings of the other individuals in the grandstand area. And so there are a lot of witnesses to be interviewed, a lot of things to be processed. There were some complicators that hopefully the next time we speak we can describe for you, but some complicators that slowed down some of the processing and the positive identification of the shooter. But know that at this time we have no reason to believe that there is any other existing threat out there. We are doing everything we can to make sure that this is thoroughly investigated, and that if there is any information developed that anyone else was involved, that between PSP and the FBI, that will very quickly be followed up on. So I think at this time, we would open it up to questions from all of you.
Was this a lone wolf attack?
Again, I think it's too early to say that. We have one shooter tentatively identified, but we're not stopping there. We're following up on a lot of information. It will be some time until we can conclusively say or answer that question, I think.
We saw snipers up there, you know, as the crowd kind of rolling in and looked at them, appreciate viewpoint to check everyone else. How long did that guy get out there?
Again, that'll all be part of the investigation, but that will all be part of the investigation. But I can tell you that preliminarily, it appears everything unfolded very quickly. So, you know, again, we'll have more information on that, but it's just too early to start definitively saying this happened at this exact time. And that's correct. We'll have that information for you. It was some distance outside of the security
perimeter. Can you comment on reports that there were people who saw someone on the roof and tried to alert authorities?
We're following up on those. I will tell you that I am aware of those, and I am aware that law enforcement had responded to a number of reports of suspicious activity. The specific response to this will be all part of the after action, but yes, law enforcement was responding to check on several suspicious occurrences.
What were the other suspicious occurrences?
That will all be part of the investigation.
So you said that you're close to identifying the shooter. Could you at least confirm that he is from Butler County, Pennsylvania? Is there anything else? Did he have any affiliation with that company, do you know?
So again, we're not prepared at this time to provide the identity of the potential shooter. We're in the process of doing the confirmation, and once we have the confirmation, we'll release the name officially to the press. But at this time, we can't give any further information on the potential shooter. No, it's a matter of doing biometric confirmations. So there was no identification on the individual, as an example. So we're looking at photographs right now, and we're trying to run his DNA and get biometric confirmation on.
Would you be able to comment just what police found left behind? Any possible devices? Did you find any extra guns? Just anything else you'd be willing to comment?
Not at this time. No, we're still in the process of an active investigation. So we'd like to reserve releasing any information like that until we have more facts. From the FBI's perspective, no. We did not have any specific threat information related to this event.
You talked about how it happened so quickly, and we know that there is at least 2 casualties, including the gunman at this point, that we're aware of. It could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Comment more about that and how it was taken care of so quickly.
So I think the credit goes to not only the Secret Service who was on site, but also the state and local partners who were there on site and were able to react immediately when the incident occurred.
Do you know how many officers fired their weapons?
I do not.
I understand that it's very early, there still would be a lot of questions, but I mean, is this a failure of security?
Really, at this point, we're not going to make that assessment. There's an active investigation. A lot of things need to occur investigatively to make those determinations of what, if any, failures there were. So really, we can't comment on that at this time.
You can say Secret Service had checked with buildings, or we're keeping a close eye, or?
Really have to defer to Secret Service for those questions.
Have the AGR property prior to the were there police at that location at any point?
Are you saying the location where the shooter was located? I don't have any information on that. You'd have to defer to Secret Service.
When do you think you will release? When will the name of the shooter be released? I mean, anything when it will happen tomorrow, or?
So that'll be as soon as we've confirmed 100%, we're willing to release that. So if we have, as far as the contact information for the press, we should be able to do that within the next few hours, I imagine.
there was a vehicle being checked not far from here. We also heard a possible related scene in Butler Park. Is there anything you can tell us tonight about other areas where law enforcement may be searching in relation to this?
Again, right now we're tracking down all leads and doing all interviews and tracking anything that we can regarding suspicious locations, vehicles, locations, interviewing individuals. So it's all related to this event, but I can't confirm or deny anything that's going on beyond that. As far as the details of the weapon?
Yeah, what kind of rifle was
Do you want to come on that?
What did he use? No, until it's confirmed, I wouldn't comment on it.
Okay, yeah, until we have the confirmation of who the shooter is, and we'll release that as part of the investigative details later.
You said that you guys are deploying extra resources, and one of the things that you said was bomb technicians. So is this standard procedure, or do you have reason to believe that there are bombs somewhere in Butler County? Just want to walk us through that.
It's primarily standard procedure of any suspicious packages. In this case, there was identification of suspicious packages around where the shooter was, and so we deployed, in an abundance of caution, bomb assets to make sure that those were cleared for investigators to move safely in the area. We're still working on, it's still an active crime scene, so I'm not going to say that the scene is 100% clear at this time.
Why are there Secret Service agents here right now for this process?
The Secret Service wasn't available for the press conference at this time.
I understand what packages you're talking about. You're talking about packages, but suspicious packages like what here share?
Really anything. I don't have specifics on what they were looking at, but you know, there's people in the crowd will leave bags as they're fleeing the scene like this. So any suspicious packages we have to treat as it may be an explosive device.
And how quickly, this wasn't, I guess, the Secret Service, I'm not going to talk about it, I guess, but when you guys jumped into action, all law enforcement and were able to take down that shooter, how quickly did everybody jump in and who ended up taking out?
So it was immediate, and we're still trying to figure that out. So we'll wait till we have more definitive information regarding that investigatively.
What about the bus, the person in the crowd? Do you have any information about how they were killed?
My understanding was it was from the shooter, but again, those will be details that are released later.
Do you search homes or apartments as a part of your method of identifying the individual?
So if that's where the leads take us, absolutely.
Was Donald Trump hit with a bullet, do you know for sure, or was it potentially something else that was?
I don't have that specific information as far as the injuries to the former president.
I understand you're releasing the suspect's identification right now, but as you know, is this person known to you guys? Is he somebody that you guys have been looking at through your premises, possibly being online, et cetera, et cetera?
Again, the information that we currently have, we're looking at that obviously very intently. And as we know that information, we'll release that as well. So we'll need to plan another time for a follow-up press conference. We're looking at all investigative leads and all everything from, and that's why we asked the public, because I'm sure there'll be cell phone video, there'll be all kinds of information that we'll use to fully flesh out exactly what happened here.
I know you're saying you can't say what type of gun it is, but do you know how many shots were fired?
I don't. I don't have that information as far as that'll come out in the investigation as well.
Is there identification tonight on the other victims?
As far as the civilians, yeah.
So we do have identification on those. We're not prepared to release it at this time. We have notified a number of family members, but they have not had an opportunity to notify extended family and things. I would confirm for you that we did have one individual killed, and I know I heard somebody say about 2 victims. There were 3 in total besides the former president. So 2 critically wounded, 1 killed.
At this point, you know they were sitting near each other and where in relation to the former president?
I don't have their exact seating by individual. Again, that'll all be part of the investigation, but their shots were scattered somewhat, and so they weren't just into one particular location.
You're saying just one fatality? That's what they're doing?
Yes.
The shooter and one fatality.
The shooter plus 1 fatality.
Okay.
So there was 1 victim of the shooter who was killed,
and then the shooter was killed. Yes, ma'am.
Witnesses say they saw a semi-automatic rifle used by the shooter. Can you share any details of it? That's what
I've heard those reports as well, and again, we do have a good idea of what the weapon was, but again, that's all part of the ongoing investigation. And I'm not trying to be cagey about that. When the SAC talked about the need to be very methodical and to be cautious with that scene, we are doing just that. We don't want anybody else getting hurt, and candidly, there are some concerns that we'll be able to talk more about later on about just what those concerns are and continue to be. That's all part of the investigation.
After the event, there were a lot of really angry people. Are you monitoring? Have there been any other threats in response to this? Are you worried? Have there been any specific threats?
That's certainly a concern, and we're monitoring that whole situation. I mentioned that we're bringing a lot of assets to bear, and so like the FBI utilizing their analysts, we also have the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center. We will utilize the resources of our intelligence division and the Criminal Intelligence Center to be able to monitor for concerns about any threats, regardless of the side of the issue or the political spectrum. We want to make sure that we try and avoid any further violence.
But no, nothing specific so far.
No, sir.
Without identifying them by name, can you say anything about the other folks who were injured or killed? Were they adults, men, male, female, anything else?
They were adults, and they're male.
All three.
Yes.
How difficult of a day is this for your department now, or all your departments to come talk to these family members, including the civilians who were gunned down, while they just go rally and try and, celebrate against the upcoming election? What are these conversations like, and how do you kind of get through that?
We have trained investigators, and we're partnered hand in hand with the FBI, again, because we've got some federal violations, some state violations. And so our investigators are going out and methodically. We have a large team of investigators that are going out, dividing up these interviews and trying to conduct them as quickly as possible. And then there'll be follow-ups. With the FBI asking for people to call in tips, I have no doubt that we will receive a lot of additional information that will also require follow-up. But again, we're working very well together, and it's only a short matter of time until we get through all of those interviews.
How close a call was it for President Trump?
There were no police hit with bullets.
From your experience, how close a call was it for?
I'm not going to speculate or comment on that.
Have any of you talked to the president? Did any of you have any kind of reaction?
No.
Which law enforcement agencies were tasked with securing this particular route outside of the United States Secret Service?
Well, the Secret Service always has the lead on securing something like this, but then they work very closely. And I hate to use the word routine, but it is a fairly routine matter for all of our agencies to work jointly with the Secret Service. And it really depends on the venue, on what information is out there, what number of resources are devoted to it. And we work with them to provide whatever is requested by the Secret Service, but they're the lead in that security.
Was there anything about this venue that made it particularly difficult to secure?
I would defer to the Secret Service to answer that. They would have done the initial assessment.
Was the rooftop part of what was being secured? Was the rooftop, given its proximity to the event, part of that process?
It's my understanding that was outside of the perimeter.
Did this shooter have any previous history?
We're not going to comment on anything about the shooter.
Did the agency deny Trump's team extra security? Any of the agencies that are out there?
Not that I'm aware of.
If Trump had been the nominee already, would he have had additional security for this event?
There again, Secret Service has the lead, and I'm not going to comment or speculate on what may or may not be provided at any given point, depending on their status as a candidate. What I will tell you is that in my experience, the Secret Service does an excellent job of maintaining security on protectees. They're very cautious. They don't hesitate to ask for resources, and candidly, we don't hesitate to supply those resources.
You're asking for the public's help. Can you elaborate and be more specific about what you would really like to see from the public, if it's videos, photos, personal accounts.
I think the videos and photos would be very helpful. And I think that once the shooter is identified, anyone that has specific information on that shooter, that would be very helpful as well to help us assess motive. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are absolutely not taking for granted that this was a lone wolf attack. And so we would be looking for any additional information that might point us toward anybody else that may have had a hand in this.
Sir, at this point, what is the main focus of the investigation? What's the most important thing for you right now, in a few hours?
Well, there's not any one single focus. I mean, certainly the immediate focus was life safety, getting the former president out of there and to care, getting care to the other victims and trying to secure the scene as quickly as possible. It shifted then from a life safety priority to then an investigative priority. And so I guess if I had to point to where we are right now, the single greatest priority would be to identifying a motive and whether there was anyone else involved.
We're just beginning the political season. Are you guys concerned with all of these rallies that happen and how they're set up? Is this gonna change maybe the venues?
Again, I would refer you to the Secret Service in terms of what they work out with the campaigns. We will continue to supply resources, as I'm sure the FBI will, and the local partners as well.
When this was announced, it was quite a few days of heads up that people were getting ready to come to this Trump rally. From a law enforcement perspective, when you announce a big event like this, all that time in advance of a week out, does it give people more time to plan something like this?
I suppose, but there's a balance, I would think, that any of the campaigns on either side try to weigh. I mean, the point of them announcing it, I suspect, is because they want the crowd. And so it's not up to us in law enforcement to tell them when they should announce or how they should announce or how they should conduct it. We offer our best advice. Again, working hand in hand with the Secret Service, offer our best advice of how best to secure and protect that venue.
Sir, considering how many people were there, and you have packed in there, and you have somebody in an elevated position with potentially a high-powered rifle, how lucky is it that we were only talking about a couple of victims? As sad and tragic as that is.
Well, we're certainly grateful that we don't have even more victims. And again, in terms of how this could have occurred, that it will be part of this after-action report and an investigation that occurs so that we can hopefully ensure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Has an autopsy been conducted yet, or is it scheduled?
It has not been conducted yet. I do not.
If somebody has video or photos, where should they send it?
So we have the 1-800 call FBI if you have audio tips, and then we set up a specific tip line for audio and video, and that's fbi.gov/Butler.
And they should send you just like any video?
Anything that anyone has that is related to this incident that they think may be of assistance investigatively, we'll take anything and we'll analyze it and we'll make the determination if it's of investigative value.
Go ahead.
So from what you've been briefed on, it sounds like law enforcement only knew he was up there until shots were fired. Is that what you're hearing?
So that is the assessment at this time.
So are you surprised that a sniper was able to fire off a handful of shots at the former president? I mean,
Again, we're still working through the security apparatus that the Secret Service had in place, what potentially happened. That there's going to be a long investigation into exactly what took place and how the individual was able to get access to the location, what type of weapon he had. All that it is really days, weeks, and months of investigation.
he was able to get off like 4 or 5 shots.
It is surprising, but again, to get all the details of that will come out later in investigation.
Going back to the perimeter of this building, I think it's going to be really difficult for people to understand that this building, a very high vantage point, some 100 meters away from where this is happening, isn't part of that perimeter. What goes into that conversation over what is in and out of why wouldn't that be?
Again, the Secret Service really needs to answer that question. They conduct the initial site survey. They do the initial security assessments. and determine where the different security locations should be. And they're the ones who are in charge of securing the scene. We, along with other state and local assets, are there to support the Secret Service and their mission.
How many troopers and agents were at the rally, obviously before the shooting, and how is that number determined? And should perhaps there have been more?
So I don't have the specific numbers. I doubt you do as well.
No, I can speak just for PSP. We had physically on site there, probably 30 to 40 members of PSP, but we also have additional resources in the area. We utilize aviation, for example, and a variety of other resources, dogs to sweep beforehand that really aren't counted in that. And again, the number is driven by what the request is from the Secret Service. You know, just in their defense, I mean, what I would want to say is it is incredibly difficult to have a venue open to the public and to secure that against any possible threat, against a very determined attacker. That's a huge lift to try and do it. And, you know, again, the investigation will really give us an opportunity to take a look at where any failures occurred and what can be done better in the future.
Lieutenant Colonel Williams, do you know when another briefing might be held?
We don't have one scheduled, but I would tell you we will let you know and give you plenty of notice. Certainly, as soon as additional things develop that would be noteworthy or of interest to you, we'll get that scheduled and have another with you.
Locally, what can residents, businesses expect to happen with the investigation over the next couple of days? What's going to be going on there?
Well, again, the interviews will all be occurring, and so they may see law enforcement in their communities. People came from a wide area to come to this rally, I'm told. So, you know, there's going to be law enforcement fanning out, and as additional calls, photos, videos come in, you know, those additional interviews will result in law enforcement being out in the community conducting those interviews. But otherwise, they really shouldn't see any other significant impact in the community.
Confirm whether it's a male or female, the homicide, the bystander who died?
It's a male.
A male?
Yes.
I'm from a European outlet from Poland, and I'm already getting text messages from, you know, back home, and people are asking, how could this happen? What's going on in America? I know that it's a philosophical question, but how can you talk to the people outside the United States about what happened here in Butler?
Well, again, what I would say is it's a tragic incident that occurred. We're not in a position to start second guessing how or why or anything else at this point. Just know that it will be thoroughly investigated. If there is anyone to prosecute, that will be done, and we'll move forward. But I don't have a good answer for you.
We'll just take one last question.
I know that PSP said that you guys were not aware of any additional requests from the Trump team for security. What about the FBI? Was there an additional request for additional security from the Trump team, and was that denied in any way, shape, or form?
No, there was no additional request for security that was ever denied by the FBI.
What does the FBI do in these events? Like, what is your role?
So we showed up after the fact. We were monitoring the event, but it was once the incident occurred that we come and we take the primary jurisdiction for the investigation. Thank you. But we'll as we have additional information, we'll provide it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Listening to a press conference with the FBI, local law enforcement, back with Jonathan Wackrow, Evan Perez, John Miller. John Miller, let's start out with you. What stood out to you? And not a lot of information. They're not releasing the name. They believe they're confident they have the identity of the alleged shooter, but and they are not saying anything about a motive at this point.
No, and they're waiting to confirm the identity that they suspect is that of the shooter through DNA. Pennsylvania State Police and the FBI are at the residence about an hour away from where the shooting occurred, where they believe this suspect lives, and they are holding that as they try to get their search warrant, and that will probably help them get the DNA. as Evan reported, the suspect was found without identification on him. Now, there are a number of ways that they could have gotten to that name, Anderson. One way would have been through information received through a source, but another way is they might have run the information from the serial number of the gun to who the purchaser was, found out that this person fits that general description and are trying to confirm that. That's a possibility. One of the other things we learned in the press conference was that they are asking people to call with tips to 1-800-CALL-FBI if you have any information. The thing that you can anticipate by tomorrow is they will set up a digital drop site on their FBI.gov site where people can send their videos in. They know that aside from what we have from our live coverage of the event and other networks have, that there are hundreds of people with cell phones who may have captured things within the fence, like we're looking at now, but also things outside the fence where they may have gotten video of the shooter as he approached that building, as he made it to the roof, as he was taken down. So typically they set up that drop so that people can send in their videos, their pictures, any other digital evidence that they have. And I think that's going to be a next step you'll see.
Evan Perez, I'm wondering if you've been hearing anything else.
Well, Anderson, I think what John is referring to is some of the work that the FBI is doing right now behind the scenes, and I think one of the very important things is if there are any people who have video from, say, an hour before the event, people might have been shooting video of the scene there as people were gathering. Was there any indication or any sign of this shooter lurking or perhaps casing the area? Doing his work ahead of time before he gets up on that roof to fire those shots. That's the kind of thing that the FBI is very, very, very much interested in. Obviously, some of the stuff that we've been airing, some of the stuff that's already on Twitter, that they can ingest and they can bring in and they can start analyzing. But what the purpose of that press conference tonight was to encourage the public to help the investigators with things that we have not yet seen surface. And so you hear there, obviously, that they're still working to identify, to make sure that they have the correct identity for the shooter. That is probably going to be done in the next hour or so. We're going to probably see also they're going to make an entry to the location where he was known to have lived. Again, once they have a search warrant, they'll be able to do that. And then the work begins to try to put together a picture of this person over the last few weeks as they perhaps were planning to carry out this attempted assassination on the former president, Anderson.
And Jonathan Wackrow, formerly of the Secret Service was not at this press conference. Obviously, there's a lot of people who have a lot of questions for the Secret Service. Do you think that they will be, holding a press conference tomorrow? Do you think how do you think they will handle it? And where does their investigation, how does that proceed? I guess, is it part of the FBI investigation? Does it proceed separately?
Well, the FBI investigation, Anderson, is a criminal investigation on the assassination crime or attempted assassination crime. But the Secret Service is going to have its own internal investigation. Remember, the Secret Service that has either an officer or an agent involved shooting on their hands right now. So they need to address that situation, as well as start a protective review that will run in parallel to the criminal investigation to understand, was there a potential lapse in the security structure? What type of vulnerability was potentially not addressed in the initial planning phases of building out that site security plan. I was a little bit shocked that a representative of the Secret Service was not there because they were the primary stakeholder in responsible for the security plan of this site. And their agents or officers were involved in the shooting itself. So it left a lot of questions unanswered that will linger now. And to answer your direct question, I do believe that they will come out with either a series of statements in response to some of those questions this evening, or join in future press conferences, about this matter.
I mean, just on the face of it, if there's a building 120 or 150 yards from the place where the former president is going to be beached, does it surprise you that there wouldn't have been somebody on that building?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that surprise me around the close proximity of that elevated location. As I said earlier, anytime that you have a threat that is able to gain the high ground with a long-range weapon, that puts them in a position of advantage. We have to understand, how did that happen? Why did that happen? What type of, was there a lapse in the security plan? Did someone leave a post? Was an area of concern not covered? Again, all of these will come out during the Secret Service investigation and possibly in the criminal investigation as well. But yeah, it's very concerning that you had this line of sight that was not mitigated. Now, the Secret Service, in its defense, does not rely on one single point of failure around a security plan. That's why you have the counter sniper team that's there. So once that threat did present itself, it was neutralized extremely quickly, by the counter snipers, and the threat was put down. So there's a lot of questions here that remain to be answered, but we'll start seeing that some of those questions being answered over the next 24 hours.
Yeah, Jonathan Wacker, Evan Perez, John Miller, thanks to everyone at the end of a difficult and traumatic day. From what we just heard at the press conference, there's clearly much more to come in this situation, potentially a lot more repercussions from it.
And Anderson, as all of this unfolds, and it's very, very painful to even be reporting about what has happened, CNN, of course, will be there to bring it all to you. For now, thanks very much for watching. The news continues right now with Jim Sciutto.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Sciutto in Washington. Quite a day in this country, quite a day in this country's history. A short time ago, police and the FBI gave an update on the investigation so far. They did officially call this an assassination attempt, the FBI has. They say they have not identified a motive for the shooter. They say there is no reason to believe at this point there are other existing threats. They have tentatively identified the shooter, but they say they're waiting to confirm the shooter's identity through DNA and other means. They say they did not receive any threat information prior to this shooting. And when asked about the number of shots, multiple shots that the shooter was able to get off, the FBI said it is surprising the shooter was able to manage that before being taken out by authorities. Well, Donald Trump's advisors say he is fine and will be at the Republican National Convention this week after he was shot in this assassination attempt. It happened at a rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday while Mr. Trump was speaking, and the cameras were rolling.
Really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hold, when you're ready, on you. Ready? Move! Up, move! Go! Up. Guys here. Guys here, move it to the stand. Get ready. You ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move? Good to move. Let's move. Let's move. Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay,
What's up?
Just shocking, riveting moments there caught on camera. As you heard, multiple shots fired by the assailant and multiple shots then fired by police, Secret Service responding. The former president, you saw there, raised his hand to the side of the head as he was apparently hit by one of those shots. The Secret Service rushing onto the stage, moving him from the stage once they confirmed that the shooter was down. As he was being taken from the stage, blood on the side of his face was visible. The Secret Service says suspected shooter is dead. In fact, they said it in those moments you saw there. And this video appears to show the gunman after he was shot on the roof of a nearby building, just a couple hundred yards away from the stage where the former president was speaking. The FBI is now appealing for the public's help in their ongoing investigation. They say they are not ready to release the identity of the shooter. They have not yet fully confirmed it. They also say they have not yet determined a motive. You can see on this map where the shooter was atop a building there. Trump on stage, marked on the map as well. Officials also say one rally attendee is dead, 2 others were critically injured. Here's part of the statement Trump posted on social media in the aftermath. Quote, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin." The FBI and state police in Pennsylvania held a news conference, as I said, just a short time ago. The FBI is now calling this an assassination attempt against Donald Trump. They do also say they are still working to confirm the identity and the motive of the shooter.
This evening, we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well. Again, at this time, we are not prepared to identify who the shooter is. We are close to that identification, and as soon as we are 100% confident in who that individual is, we will share it with the press. With that being said, also, we do not currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify what that motive was.
So many open questions at this point as the police, the FBI continue their investigation. CNN's Danny Freeman, he joins us now from Butler, Pennsylvania, was inside that press conference with law enforcement. They say they have tentatively ID'd the shooter. They're waiting to confirm that identity. But did I also hear correctly, Danny, that they have identified what they believe to be the shooter's home or where the shooter was staying?
Listen, I'll be perfectly honest. They were not releasing a tremendous amount of information when it comes to the identity of the shooter, as you were saying. They did say they have tentatively ID'd this shooter, but right now what they're waiting on is, as you noted at the top there, biometric confirmation, because there was no ID of the individual on his person when he was ultimately, in their words, neutralized by law enforcement earlier this evening. I will say that that question was asked. Are you going to the shooter's home? Are you looking at all those things? And the understanding is that that is part of this current investigation. But again, law enforcement here at this press conference behind me were not willing to really give us more information on this shooter. I just want to also note, in addition to the attempted assassination attempt that the FBI is now officially calling this and that they are investigating, Pennsylvania State Police, they were also going into detail that they are investigating, well, the federal agents, they are dealing with the assassination attempt. The Pennsylvania State Police, they're dealing with the homicide of one person who was also in the crowd and 2 others who were also critically wounded at that Trump rally due to gunfire as well. There are so many questions that we have. At this point, it's too early, according to law enforcement officials, to say if this was just a lone wolf. It is too early to say how long this shooter potentially was up there on that roof that you've been describing over the past few minutes. And also at this point, it's too early to say what any motive for this particular shooting is. So those are all some of the questions that we are hoping to get answers to in the coming certainly hours and days. One of the things that I'll note, though, is I asked the folks here behind me, the law enforcement officials, if this was a failure of security, which clearly it does seem here that it was a massive failure of security. And the FBI special agent in charge who was addressing the media said it's too early to identify where specific failures were. But I bring that up because the one government group that was not present at this particular press conference that was, of course, heavily involved in charge of protecting this environment was the Secret Service, and they were not present for this particular press conference. And a lot of the questions that we were asking of these officials about lapses in security here for this event, they said that you have to put those to Secret Service, and of course, Secret Service was not present at this particular press conference. So again, there are still at this point a lot of questions that we do have, certainly about the identification of the person, how long he was there, and how in the world this was able to happen. But the FBI and local law enforcement, they're encouraging people who may have been at that rally to call in, to provide any other cell phone video that they might have taken, to give any information if they potentially know who might have been that shooter, to come forward and to help with this investigation. And I think that we're just getting an incredible look, certainly a first look, I should say, at the massive scale of this investigation that is underway right now from the federal level to here at the local level in Western Pennsylvania. Back to you.
No question, Danny Freeman. As we noted earlier, the FBI is now leading that investigation. And to Danny's point, there were a lot of eyes and ears in the audience. There's some of them taking videos of this, and we're seeing one of those right here now. It's another angle of Saturday's shooting. The video itself does not show a lot, but it's what you hear that is more interesting. Take a look, listen to what people are saying prior to the shooting and during it.
And look what happened to our team. Probably 20 minutes. And you know, that's a little bit of
Stay under here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there. He's on the roof, buddy.
He's dead. I just seen his hair go up and show up in the head. Holy.
Well, they hit anybody over there.
Did he pull up the shot?
He number of shots.
I thought that was us.
No, that was him. The first three shots were him.
Holy fuck. He's watched the guy get killed. This is cool. Let's go. He's on the roof right there. He's right there on the roof. Just on the other side of the I believe the activist dispatch, but I'm not sure.
Part of what that video highlights is that prior to the shooting, there were people just outside the security cordon at that event who saw someone on top of the building, someone who appears to have been the shooter, and were attempting to warn police about it before those shots were fired. And of course, in that video, you hear when the shots are fired and those same people witnessing when the shooter was taken out. From there, we go to another angle. It shows a different angle, but a revealing perspective. What you're looking at here appears to be Secret Service counter snipers on a roof of the building just behind where Donald Trump was speaking. And you can see them reacting to something off camera. In fact, the sniper's gun, the weapon, jerks upward right there at the moment of the first shots. And then you see them firing their weapons as those Secret Service members rushed onto the stage to bring the former president, push him to the ground for safety. Of course, this moments after they were hit. The point of showing that video there is it appears that the counter snipers were at least looking in the direction of the shooter prior to the shots being fired. Retired FBI agent, CNN law enforcement contributor Steve Moore joins me now. And Steve, it's good to have you on. You've been in law enforcement. I've covered law enforcement for years. I'm always very conscious of not jumping to conclusions. Counterterror, you only know about their failures. You don't know about their successes. Similar with the Secret Service. They are dealing with constant threats all the time. They snuff out threats more times than we know. But here, given your experience, I wonder what failures you see here. And particularly when we look at that most recent video, did it look to you like the counter snipers might have had eyes on the shooter prior?
Well, if they did, they didn't have eyes on him for very long. From what I'm seeing on their reactions, it looked to me that they probably within a second or two engaged that shooter. So I think you're right, Jim. I think they had turned their attention to him, maybe because of some yelling. I mean, you've got Secret Service all around. You've got other people on the frequency who can say, hey, people are shouting about a guy with a gun, in quadrant so-and-so. They don't just say, over to your left or over to your right. They've got that entire area gridded out. So they might say, area 5 or G2 or whatever. And so they were turning their attention to him. What I don't know is whether the building that he was on had a lip around the edge, which might have concealed him until he fired the weapons. And so I don't see the problem necessarily with the counter snipers. What I'm concerned about and what's I think going to have to really be looked into is the vertical view of the thing. I mean, we've got drones at Costco now. You have airplanes available. Why did you not have a vertical eye on that entire area?
Yeah, the distance here, and I think we can throw up the map again that showed the stage relative to that rooftop where the shooter was firing from. What you see there is, and you get a sense of what was inside the security cordon where you would have had to pass through the metal detectors. A number of folks who were in the crowd said that, yes, they had to pass through magnetometers before they entered the immediate area. But that location of the suspected gunman's position was outside that area. Typically, with events like this, what kind of security is there outside the cordon? Is it just looking for potential threats? If you're not screening people for weapons outside there, I imagine you certainly focus attention on high points, including rooftops.
You would think so, Jim. And, before it comes across that I'm criticizing Secret Service, they have to be right every single time.
Yep.
The bad guys only have to be right once, or lucky once. So you have your inner perimeter, your mid perimeter, and your outer perimeter. The outer perimeter in this case would be anything that wasn't in the security zone, in the screen zone. That is frequently an area picked up by local police who are assisting, as you've heard many times during this evening. Local police assist in each one of these things and provide valuable services to the Secret Service. So that would likely have been an area given over to local police. But I'm not sure that it was an appropriate distance to be out. I was a counter sniper for 2 years. And I'm telling you, if that was 100 to 150 yards, which is what it looks like, it's not actually a gimme, but it's close. I mean, that is, if you have somebody trained, that is much too close to have high ground occupied by the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when we speak of close, listen, a bullet grazed the ear of the former president, current candidate for president, and multiple shots were fired. This is extremely close to an even far worse outcome. I did want to ask a question because Pennsylvania is an open carry state. Is it possible that law enforcement would be less aware of, attuned to, or react less to someone carrying, even outside an event with a former president, one currently campaigning for president, in an open carry state? In other words, that they wouldn't look as alarmingly at that possibility, given that that's the law?
Yeah, no, Jim, I don't think so. In the same way that, for instance, I have as a retired federal agent and FBI agent who was on SWAT, I have a 50-state concealed carry permit. I would never take that weapon anywhere near a Secret Service protected event. And likewise, if somebody were to show up open carry within eyesight of a Secret Service venue. Anybody who ignored that would be committing the gravest error. Just because the state is open carry doesn't mean every place in the state is, and it doesn't mean that you can open carry in the vicinity of a campaign stop or a rally without being challenged immediately. And frankly, in that situation, you'd probably want to aggressively challenge them.
Tell us what the FBI, who is leading this investigation, is focusing on right now. They have a tentative ID, they've said. So they've done some of the work there. It sounds like, based on their answers at the press conference, they're holding back on the name out of an abundance of caution now. They're waiting for DNA confirmation, etc. They've got the weapon. And they have a lot of video, right, of how this played out. What is the number one question they're looking to have answered right now?
Who's helping him, or who helped him, and then secondarily, where has this guy been for the last few weeks, months, maybe even a year? When you look at somebody who shoots a candidate or shoots at a candidate at a campaign event, what you find, and you found this with Hinckley, you found this with just so many other shootings, that those people have followed the candidate and they followed him around the United States. And so what you're looking right now is you want to get all their financial records. You want to find out if their debit card purchased airline tickets, if the debit card, what cities was it used in? Was it used in Milwaukee? Was it used in New York City? Was it used in Florida? You want to find out all these things about where they've been, and you want to compare every single debit transaction, and that's just one of the hundreds of things you're looking at. You're going to compare that to the potential target's schedule. And that's just, you're going to have so many different teams working on this. You're going to have the team working on travel. Friends, right now, one of the reasons they're not talking about the name is they want to door knock people who aren't expecting them. They want to go and talk to people who can't prepare in advance for the FBI coming to their door. They want to get to locations where, if there is an accomplice in any way, shape, or form, they can't hide evidence.
Stephen Moore, thanks so much for sharing your expertise here. It's a difficult moment in this country. It's one that requires patience and time and calm, and we appreciate your analysis.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, former President Trump's plane landed at Newark Airport in New Jersey just a short time ago. The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden spoke with Trump earlier on Saturday following the shooting, and he has now returned to the White House early from Delaware. Mr. Biden has been calling for unity in the shooting's aftermath. He says he is grateful to hear Trump is safe and well. Here's the president earlier condemning political violence. Have a listen.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
Charlie Dent is a former Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, now executive director of the Aspen Institute Congressional Program. He joins me now from Avalon, New Jersey. Charlie, it's good to have you on tonight. Those words from the president, important, and being echoed by many, not all, but by many across party lines. Representative Mike Lawler, he told me earlier, this level of hatred and violence cannot continue. Republican. President Biden, of course, a Democrat, he called it sick. Martin Luther King Jr., who knows political violence all too well, he says that political violence has no place in our society. You're hearing that. And those are important words, are they not? Particularly across the aisle, given the precarious moment we're in right now.
Well, of course, Jim. Look, political violence is never acceptable. And sadly, in our country, we've had 4 presidents of the United States assassinated. Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, of course, John F. Kennedy. We had the RFK was assassinated. Martin Luther King, George Wallace was severely wounded. Reagan shot. Gerald Ford, there were 2 attempts on his life. The shooter missed both times, as I recall. And so, sadly, we have this terrible tradition in Congress. The threat level against elected officials, particularly in Congress, is intolerably high. Of course, Steve Scalise, Gabby Giffords, and Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked with a hammer. This is out of control, and I think a lot of it has to do with the political discourse that it is just so angry, so vengeful, and so much rage that's. I hate to say it, and of course I hate the social media. A lot of people go on social media and say the most vile things. I mean, I haven't even looked at social media tonight. I can't imagine what's being said right now. But truthfully, this is a big part of the sickness in our culture right now. And it's translated into this horrific event. And thank goodness the former president is okay. But it's a sobering moment for all of us.
Well, yeah, avoid it, right? Avoid social media in moments like this, because there is, and I've seen some of it. There's some good things being said, but there's a lot of bad things being said as well, and some of them by sitting lawmakers. You look at the comments from J.D. Vance, where you already have attempts to assign blame where there's no direct evidence of blame, and that is the worry going forward. I mean, we saw this, for instance, following the classified documents search at Mar-a-Lago, fire directed at the FBI, right? And you must be worrying about similar at this point against the U.S. Secret Service or even the FBI, which has taken over this investigation, that the institutions that are actually trying to respond to this and make things safer might become targets themselves to political ends.
Of course, and that's why it's important that we respect institutions like the FBI and the Secret Service. These agencies, they're populated with professionals, who really don't. I've never found them to be partisan during my time in government service. I felt that they were professionals and they tried to do their jobs as best they could. But it just seems that so much of our government, it feels like people think that the government has at least much of the bureaucracy has a partisan inclination, and so many folks don't trust institutions to do their jobs. And at a time like this, it's important that we have trust in the FBI and the Secret Service to get to the bottom of what happened. We all want to know what happened, and it's tragic that this is where we are. So many institutions that had always been respected and admired are now tarnished with a partisan taint, in many cases unfairly.
You heard President Biden say there is no place for this kind of violence in America. He called it sick repeatedly, and he said that people who want to go to a political rally should not face this kind of risk as they go to a rally, nor should the candidate, of course. The Republican National Convention is next week. We can be certain that Donald Trump, the target of this assassination attempt, as the FBI has declared it, will be talking about this. He has every right to. What message would you like to hear from Donald Trump in this moment?
Well, prior to this assassination attempt, I thought the Republican National Convention they were going to try to maybe show a softer and gentler side to Donald Trump. Now that this assassination attempt has occurred, it's hard to say what this convention will be like. Hopefully, I hope that there will be calls for unity in this country, that whatever our differences, they aren't that great. I mean, we have to stop treating each other. And I hope that this message is conveyed at the Republican National Convention, that, the Democrats may be our opponents. We might think they're politically misguided, but they're not our enemies. They're our fellow citizens. And we have a debate with them every year, or for every election. And we hope we win. If we lose, we're going to try to beat them next time. But it seems that, we've kind of turned this all into a zero-sum game. That, if I don't win, this is the end of the country, the end of the republic. The Constitution is gone. And I think we have to get beyond this apocalyptic rhetoric that so many, frankly, on both sides are deploying these days. They deploy this, and so they make the stakes seemingly so high that it might prompt some of these sick individuals to take these drastic actions like this shooter did tonight.
Yeah. And sadly, a tribal dynamic, right? That anything
Yeah.
Good for your side is good. Anything good for the other side is bad, and the reverse as well.
Absolutely.
Well, former Congressman Charlie Dent, it's always good to have you on. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on this difficult evening.
Thanks, Jim.
Republican Senate candidate Dave McCormick was in the front row of the rally. In fact, he was set to speak. Moments before the shots were fired, President Trump had invited McCormick to the stage. He spoke earlier to my colleague Wolf Blitzer.
I was in the front row, so the president was speaking out to the crowd. Looked like a big crowd. I think I was told 15,000 or so, and I was seated to his right in the front row, and he had actually just announced me and invited me up to the stage, and then said, "No, I'll have you come up in a few minutes." And about a minute or so after that, we heard a series of shots. I think 7 or 8 shots, just pop, pop, pop. I was a former Army guy. They sounded like a small caliber weapon, but obviously I'm not sure about that. And it was like all of a sudden just chaos. The Secret Service immediately covered the president, jumped on top of him, and the crowd obviously all went immediately to the ground, to people on their knees or laying down on the ground. And then the president got up and sort of was surrounded by the Secret Service. And you see this, you could see him just with a little bit of blood on him, and his sort of fist came out in defiance. And then over my shoulder behind me, it was clear that somebody had been hit. And so people around this gentleman were trying to administer first aid, and he was clearly, this person was clearly injured. It seemed severely. There was a lot of blood, and eventually some police officers came up and carried him to where I hope he got the urgent care, and obviously praying for him now. So that was what I saw. I saw the immediate attack on the president, and I saw the fact that this person behind me was injured. But you can imagine with that kind of incident happening, very hard to know what's coming. In fact, I'm not sure whether it was one shooter or 2 shooters. I couldn't really tell. It seemed like the shots were coming from my front. So to from the president's left, but which would have made sense why the person behind me was hit. But I'm not sure if there was also shots coming from other directions. So it was, as you might imagine, it was chaotic and confusing in the moment.
David McCormick there, eyewitness to the shooting. I'm Jim Sciutto. Our breaking news coverage continues.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Sciutto in Washington. A difficult day in this country's history. The FBI now says that the shooting that injured former President Donald Trump was an assassination attempt. The FBI and state police in Pennsylvania held a news conference a short time ago. They said they are now working to confirm the gunman's identity. They do not yet have a motive. Here's a look at how it all happened on Saturday as the cameras were rolling.
I really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hold, when you're ready, on you. Ready, move, up, move, go. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here, move it to the stand. Get ready. You ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move? Good to move. Let's move. Let's move. We're clear. Come on. Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes. Hold on, your head is bloody. So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes. Okay, my shoes down. Watch out.
Moments playing out before our eyes there. As you saw and heard, there were a series of pops. President then raising his hand to the side of his face as it happened. Secret Service rushing him off the stage after the president first said, it sounded like, let me get my shoes, and then he wanted to take a moment there to raise his fist for the crowd before they then moved him to the armored limousine there to be taken away to a hospital, in fact. As he was being taken from the stage, you could also see that there was blood on the side of his face. The Secret Service says the suspected shooter dead. In fact, here is a video which appears to show the gunman after he was shot and killed on the roof of a building just a couple